Chapter 4186. What do you want to say? You want our Ming province to take in those filthy and useless people. Akir haughtily lifted her chin and coldly swept a glance at Mu Xiaoxue. If you want to be a saint, you should take these people back to your city of shadows. In any case, your city of shadows is comparable to Ming province's capital, so it can definitely accommodate these people. Mu Xiaoxue's small face paled slightly, as though she didn't expect this Ming province girl to be so shrewd, mocking her as a saint. As soon as she opened her mouth, Liang Qingqing curled her lips in amusement and flashed to the little stoic side. Little junior sister, let's go out for a walk. The atmosphere was so foul that she could feel a gloomy atmosphere even if she stayed in the room. She didn't want her little junior sister to suffocate. The little stoic nodded. When the two walked out hand in hand, they happened to see a group of people walking into the city lord's estate's main hall. When the leader saw her, he immediately gave her a dirty look. He didn't even look at her and directly led the group of people to walk past her. Liang Qingqing immediately knitted her brows and turned to glance at that haughty girl. This girl looked to be 18 years old. She was pretty and beautiful, and her lips were gorgeous. However, her chin was slightly sharp and narrow, giving her entire face a bit of sharpness. Who is it? Liang Qingqing asked in a low voice. Someone on the other side had already announced clearly, Medicine King Island's Miss Ni Hanji has arrived. Liang Qingqing couldn't resist rolling her eyes as she watched the 2 rows of Medicine King Island's guards clear the way and escort the girl to the table. You know her? Liang Qingqing pulled the little stoic out the door. Arbor nodded. I've seen her a few times. Medicine King Island's island master's daughter. She's a high consecrator's disciple. Fuck, I thought she was the future island master. Wasn't she just a consecrator's disciple? What a grand show of extravagance. It really scared Qingqing to death. After the 2 of them left, they naturally didn't pay attention to Ni Hanji's movements. Ni Hanji walked in front of everyone and said aloofly, Medicine King Island learned that something happened in Jiawei City and sent us to help. Ni Hanji had originally followed the Lin family to join in the fun. Previously, she had been arrested along with Lin Muir and Gu Yisin to the capital's prison. Fortunately, the Lin family and the Medicine King Island had worked together to mediate, and she had finally been released from prison. In order to make amends, the Lin family naturally granted her every request. He thought that Ni Hanji was in a bad mood, so he accompanied her to Jiawei City to watch the competition and relax. Who would have thought that they would encounter such a thing? Originally, Ni Hanji didn't want to get involved in the muddy waters of Jiawei City. It was just that he had received a message from the island master not long ago, so he reluctantly accepted it. The Medicine King's Island is a place of benevolence and care for the poor commoners. Ni Hanji said with an indifferent expression. This time, Jiawei City has met with a great disaster, and the commoners are suffering. If they need any elixirs, medicinal liquids, and the like, Medicine King Island can give everyone a 30% discount and sell them cheaply. Everyone could not help but look at each other. Isn't this Miss Ni of Medicine King Island a bit too strange? Those medicinal pills and medicinal liquids were easily worth thousands of gold. Ordinary commoners, even if you gave them a 50% discount, they wouldn't be able to afford them, right? Isn't he supposed to be benevolent and caring for the world? Why do they still need money? Everyone was a bit confused. Ni Hanji swept a disdainful glance at them. What's with your expressions? Are there any pharmacists among you with special abilities? Step forward, Ni Hanji said impatiently. Chapter 4187. According to our Medicine King Island's research over the past few days. Ni Hanji sat down at the table and said indifferently, high-level apothecaries can suppress corpse poison. Her gaze swept over everyone's faces. The higher the level of the apothecary, the richer the medicinal effects. If the apothecary gives himself medicinal effects in advance, he can prevent corpse poison for a certain period of time. Our Medicine King Island has 2 golden-level apothecaries, but unfortunately, they are not here at the moment. Ni Hanji's expression was haughty as her gaze swept over Mo Lien's group, who had turned to leave without a word. Her gaze instantly turned furious. Stop right there. The 2 rows of Medicine King Island guards immediately drew their sabers and blocked the path of Mo Lien's group. Mo Lien looked back and sneered, spitting out 2 words from between her teeth. You want to die? The Medicine King Island guards blocking her path were clearly intimidated by her aura. Their hands trembled, and they almost lost their grip on their sabers. They hastily retreated a few steps uneasily. Ni Hanji slammed the table and stood up, reprimanding angrily, "Look at you motley crew, what can you do for the citizens of the city? Our Medicine King Island has stepped forward without hesitation to lead this battle against Heavenly Providence, but you are not cooperating at all." Ni Hanji said angrily. "Don't think that just because of your noble status." Ming Yasi left with his group without another word and waved his hand in passing. "We will head to the eastern region from the Underworld province. We from the Divine Prefecture will head to the western region." Eldest young Master Qin chuckled as he fanned himself and led the Qin Estates group outside. Ni Hanji suddenly felt that her face was getting more and more embarrassed. She almost couldn't breathe because of the anger in her chest. Akir couldn't help but snicker. "Look, you think you're infallible, using Medicine King Island's chicken feather as a token of authority. Do you really think you can ride over the 3 provinces? To put it bluntly, Medicine King Island was a desolate island reclusive from the world. It had nothing to do with the 3 provinces. And you want to use Medicine King Island's name to command them? Sangzhou's Huayu Academy, Underworld Continent's Tianhua Academy, and the people from the 4 major cities all stood up and followed out. They couldn't be bothered with Ni Hanji, who was talking to herself. Where did this lunatic come from? The moment he came in, he wanted to give orders to all of them. If you don't know how to speak properly, then scram. "Miss, what should we do now?" A little maidservant with a round face hesitantly took a step forward and asked in a mosquito-like voice. Ni Hanji clenched her teeth and slammed the table. "Corpse puppets are everywhere in the city. It's hard to move around. Without a doctor to help them, let's see what they can do." Ni Hanji couldn't help but grit her teeth when she thought of the Crown Prince's icy gaze when he turned back to look at her. She thought of the Crown Prince's mocking gaze when he looked at her. These people did not put her in their eyes. Soon, they would know how to write the word death. At that time, she would make them all beg her. Arbor tugged at Mo Lien's sleeve, and the latter naturally looked down at him, amused by the little fellow's curious baby face. "What is it? What did that woman say just now?" When she and senior sister Liang were chatting outside the door, they couldn't help but be curious when they saw Ming Yasi and the others storming out. "Just a woman who thinks she's infallible," Mo Lien said indifferently. Lu Yu and the others followed behind Prince Mo and couldn't help but laugh when they heard this. Miss Ni was giving orders just now, but unfortunately, no one was willing to pay attention to her. Chapter 4188. Arbor uttered an "oh" and didn't say anything else. Why was it that every time they chatted, they would kill the conversation? Everyone couldn't help but twitch their mouths. They couldn't resist sizing her up and shaking their heads as they snickered inwardly. The little stoic didn't seem to be interested in what was happening in the room at all. She was actually just casually asking the group headed to the western part of the city. While they were cleaning up the zombies, they also rescued some commoners who had been surrounded by zombies. Arbor and the people from the Qin estate helped to check if they had been poisoned by zombie poison. While they were busy, they heard a commotion ahead. "Oh no, a zombie has scratched several people. It's charging toward us, ah!" Following the frantic shouts, the crowd that had already stabilized started to flee in a panic again. "Don't run around recklessly," Qin Jiu yelled anxiously. "Hey, you guys!" However, who could clearly hear what the others were saying at this critical moment. Everyone was fleeing for their lives out of instinct. Duan Wuqing drew his sword to meet the zombie, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, chopping off one of its tentacles. This thing was neither human nor beast. Its arm was like an octopus with countless soft tentacles extending from it. It was truly frightening to look at. This is an advanced level rank 3 zombie. On the side, Lu Yu said gravely, "Be careful that its tentacles will separate." Before she could finish speaking, that zombie's 2 tentacles flew out with a whoosh and whipped directly at the long sword in Duan Wuqing's hand. Duan Wuqing was alarmed, and he spun around to retreat 2 steps. A spirit fire burned over and enveloped that tentacle. However, that thing was very tenacious and only burned to ashes after jumping a few times in the fire. The zombie was extremely vexed after suffering 2 losses in a row. Advanced level rank 3 zombies like this had developed intelligence and were very vengeful. Immediately, as if it had locked onto Duan Wuqing, it whipped out several tentacles and swiftly crawled toward him. "Be careful!" Xiao Mu shouted from afar, whipping out a vine with a flick of her hand. However, a hole suddenly split open on that tentacle zombie's chest, and a scarlet-eyed zombie chick burrowed out. Without any explanation, he bit onto Duan Wuqing's left wrist. Qi Xian cried out in surprise. Before she could rush forward, she saw Duan Wuqing lift up the corpse puppet bird with his sword and slash it into meat paste with a few slashes. Little Fatty quickly ran to his side and pulled his hand to take a look. His eyes turned red with anxiety. "Broken wood. I'm fine." Mo Lien and Hechen rushed over when they heard the news. They immediately stopped the high-level zombie with 17 to 18 tentacles. One of them used a wooden cage to imprison it. The other person's black flame spread and burned. The high-level zombie puppet roared twice at first, but gradually, it was roasted into a puddle of corpse water by the black fire. Before it died, its small eyes emitted a very human-like look of fear. Looking at Mo Lien and Ma Shichen's expressions, it was as if they had seen a ghost. It was truly hilarious. He was the one who looked like a ghost, but he saw others as ghosts. The exhausted commoners collapsed to the ground one after another. Some covered their faces and cried, some hugged their heads and cried bitterly. All of them were at a loss of what to do. They only felt that their future was boundless and they didn't know where they would end up. Duan Wuqing. Arbor dashed over and grabbed his wrist. He lowered his head and saw that the little zombie chick had bitten 2 black bloody holes in his hand. The skin around the holes was already rotting. "It's fine." Duan Wuqing shook his head. Just now, he had already used the medicinal power to control this layer of corpse energy and confined it to his wrist. Chapter 4189. He took out his sword, but Arbor grabbed his hand and shouted angrily, "What are you doing?" Duan Wuqing was a bit stupefied by her berating, and he muttered, "Chop, just chop off his wrist, heh." Arbor snorted. "You're a brave man who severed his wrist, not distressed at all." Qi Xian wiped her tears on the side. "Big brother Duanmu, how about we think of another way?" Xiao Mu was burning with rage, and she burned the small zombie puppet bird that Duan Wuqing had already chopped into several pieces into ashes. This hateful zombie bird. She couldn't help but recall how she was bitten by the zombie that brat Yu Hui at Qian Luo's underground fighting arena. The ones that bit her were precisely this kind of seemingly harmless small zombie bird. They always liked to hide behind or inside large zombie puppets and deliver a fatal blow at any time. Duan Wuqing glanced at her helplessly and said softly, "Jojo, if I use medicinal power to control this zombie poison, I have to replenish it every 2 days. Otherwise, it will spread to my arm again. Who knows if one day my medicinal power won't be able to keep up and he might as well sever his wrist cleanly." Duan Wuqing wasn't someone who liked to be a burden to others. In any case, it was his left wrist that was bitten, so it wouldn't affect him holding a sword normally. Even if it was his right wrist that was bitten today, at worst, he could just start practicing using his left hand again. Shut up. The little stoic berated him angrily and abruptly pressed a handful of ointment onto his wound, crushing it fiercely with her small hand. It hurt so much that Duan Muqing's handsome face twitched slightly, but he endured it and didn't make a sound. Jojo, Jojo. Qi Xianxian was a bit alarmed and poked the back of her hand. The little stoic's expression was unsightly, and the icy glint in her eyes could freeze Duan Muqing into pieces. This person usually didn't speak much, but he didn't seem to care about his body at all when he made a decision. He's really decisive. Sever his wrist? He was probably still thinking that it was fortunate that it wasn't his right wrist that was severed. She really wanted to beat him to death. Mo Lian walked over and patted Duan Muqing's shoulder. She pulled his hand over and naturally infused the medicinal effects into his body. Duan Muqing's eyes suddenly flickered. He looked at the crown prince in surprise and said softly, God tier. God-level pharmacist. He could sense that the medicinal power coming from the crown prince was at least a stage higher than his own. If he was a heaven-grade alchemist, then the crown prince was at least a divine-grade alchemist. He was indeed very strong. As Duan Muqing thought to himself, a sense of reverence for a high-level pharmacist rose in his heart. All right, keep it under control for now. Jojo will think of something. Mo Lian glanced at him and tugged on the little girl's cold hand. He patted her head to comfort her. Jojo, it's okay now. Ha! A mocking laugh came from outside the crowd. She saw 2 rows of guards from Medicine King Island, escorting Ni Hanji over like stars surrounding the moon. Miss Ni's expression turned ugly when she saw the crown prince. The moment she spoke, she questioned loudly, so you two are both pharmacists. Then why didn't you say anything when I asked at the city lord's estate whether there were pharmacists? You're too selfish. Ni Hanji looked icily at the 2 men in front of her. Both of them were good-looking people. Currently, Duan Muqing was injured, and his face and wrist were stained with blood. Lu Yu was supporting him, but it didn't affect his handsome appearance at all. Instead, it added a bit of sickly beauty to him. Chapter 4190. Ni Hanji's eyes flickered as she thought, these 2 before me, along with those young sirs from the Qin estate, are indeed worthy of the title of exceptionally fine young sirs. Unfortunately, their temperaments were too unruly and aloof, and not a single one of them gave her a good look. When she was on Medicine King Island, no man dared to treat her like this. When she traveled outside with her master, she was always flattered by every patrician family they visited. When had she ever encountered these stubborn people? Eldest young Sir Qin creased his brows and glanced speechlessly at the woman before him. Could it be that this woman's lunacy flared up again? Did she think that Mo Lian and Duan Muqing were her servants or subjects? How dare she berate them like this? The Omega Kotoku young master also abruptly creased his brows and turned his head away in disgust. Qin Jiu pursed his lips and said, Are you crazy? What did it have to do with a woman from Medicine King Island like you whether or not they have medicinal effects and whether or not they want to use it? Did you have to show such an interrogative tone? Why aren't you saying anything? Ni Hanji stood there majestically and questioned furiously. Earlier, she clearly said that if there was an apothecary, they would step forward themselves. In the end, no one paid her any attention. It was simply infuriating. Before Mo Lian could slap this person away, the little stoic teleported in front of Ni Hanji and swiftly darted her ferrule out from her sleeve. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist covering his face with his hand. He had a premonition that the following scene would be very explosive. As expected, the little stoic's frosty face that wouldn't melt for 1,000 years slapped Ni Hanji's face with her ferrule without a second word. After a crisp slap, Ni Hanji was still a little taken aback. She probably never expected that someone would actually dare to lay a hand on her, someone from the dignified Medicine King Island. Hence, when the other feral slapped her right cheek, she finally snapped out of her daze with grief and indignation. Her small face contorted as she shouted harshly, "You dare lay a hand on me?" Xiao Mu flew up and kicked Nai Hanji in the stomach, directly sending her flying. She somersaulted 3 times in a row before slamming her into a low dirt wall with a bang. Everyone turned pale with fright as they dodged to the left and right. They covered their heads and squatted down, not even daring to breathe. Soon after, they discovered that the little stoic was only targeting that young lady from Medicine King Island. She didn't even glance at the others. The 2 rows of guards from the Medicine King Island glared angrily. Just as they were about to step forward with their sabers drawn, they were surrounded by a group of black-clothed youths, unable to move an inch forward. Ridiculous. What the hell? You talk too much. With a cold expression, the little stoic kicked Nai Hanji 3 times in a row, sending her tumbling heavily in front of eldest young Sir Qin. All the young sirs of the Qin estate simultaneously retreated 3 steps in unison and very perceptibly cleared out an empty space for the little stoic to display her skills. The little stoic had truly endured this person for too long. If it wasn't for her master, why would she tolerate her? Grandmaster Hewen had such a good temperament and self-restraint. How could he have taken in such a foolish disciple? Did his brain fall into a manure ditch? Did he not bring it out when he was born? The little stoic's pent-up fury finally dissipated after she was kicked several times in succession and given a round of violent beatings with the ferule. She turned her head and angrily shouted at Duanmu Qing, "Acting on your own initiative." Young Sir Duanmu was a bit stupefied. Yuan Shichen could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He raised his hand and patted Duanmu Qing sympathetically. With a mocking expression, he said, "Although Qiao Qiao was beating that person up, all 4 sentences were scolding you. I speak a lot of nonsense." Duanmu Qing was instantly speechless. Chapter 4191. To Arbor, Duanmu Qing's words of "severing her wrist" and "no problem" were probably nonsense. Mo Lien was a bit speechless. She walked up and pulled her expressionless wife back. All right, there's no need for you to do it yourself. If you don't like her, just have Ao Yi and the others beat her up." Ao Yi nodded in agreement. They had long found this bossy peacock-like woman displeasing to the eye. What the hell was she shouting and wrangling in front of the crown prince? Did she really think she was someone important? Wasn't she just a minor disciple from Medicine King Island? What right did she have to be so rude to His Highness and think so highly of herself? Nai Hanji's face was filled with terror, and she swayed from side to side before barely managing to stand up straight. Her hair was disheveled, and locks of her hair drooped in front of her chest. Her face was covered in bloodstains, and her eyes were beaten to a pulp, so she couldn't see the things in front of her clearly. "What are you doing?" 2 lackeys hastily squeezed through the crowd and rushed over, yelling angrily at Arbor and the others. These 2 people were from Chengdu's Lin family. They had specially accompanied this Miss Ni to Jiuwei City to watch the competition and pass the time. They were considered upper-middle experts in the Lin family, so they were usually treated very well in the Lin family. They were also used to speaking arrogantly. When the little stoic beat up Nai Hanji just now, the little maidservant saw something amiss and immediately stealthily left the crowd to find these 2 people. Thus, when they arrived, they only saw Nai Hanji's weather-beaten and miserable appearance and didn't know what exactly happened. Xiao Mu coldly swept those 2 people a glance. "And who are you?" The 2 lackeys were discerning people. They saw that although Arbor was only wearing a simple academy white robe, he was far from a normal person's match. They didn't dare to be rash at once and cupped their hands in salute. "We are from Chengdu's Lin family." Seeing that their attitudes were acceptable, Arbor didn't want to argue with them and turned to walk to Mo Lien and Duanmu Qing. "Let's go back." Everyone nodded in agreement. The zombies in this area were more or less cleaned up, and the people who needed to be saved were saved. The group of people planned to return to the city lord's mansion first before discussing the matter. Ni Hanji was supported by a young maidservant. She was so angry that her body trembled. She swayed and said angrily, "Stop her." The two retainers of the Lin family looked at each other and said hesitantly, "Miss Ni, we're alone, so we should," before the words, "forget it," could be spat out, Ni Hanji's twisted face became even more twisted and ugly. "Lin Jun, Lin Xiang. How dare you disobey my orders?" Ni Hanji shouted angrily, as if she had gone crazy. "What did Patriarch Lin tell the two of you when you came here? You have to listen to me. Mine. I'm asking the two of you to kill this woman at all costs." Ni Hanji shouted, "Otherwise, the two of you don't have to return to the Lin family." Both Lin Jun and Lin Xiang's eyes flashed with a hint of anger. Ni Hanji's temper was something that no one could stand. Although the two of them were ordered to protect her, they weren't selling themselves as slaves, okay? Ni Hanji's matter-of-fact attitude was truly unbearable, and they also felt a bit mentally exhausted. Lin Jun restrained his anger and cupped his hands at her. "Miss Ni, it's better to have some self-awareness as a person." What a joke. The row of people standing next to the little stoic all had unfathomable cultivations. Chapter 4192. Although a few of the sirs merely stood there and looked at them indifferently, Lin Jun felt that the two brothers couldn't discern their cultivation realms at all. Rashly attacking was tantamount to asking for humiliation. They weren't that stupid. Would they go up and ask for a beating? Wasn't it simply hilarious? The round-faced maidservant supported her miss, wiping her tears in heartache. "Miss, how are you, miss?" Ni Hanji tightly gripped the maidservant's hand, her body trembling in anger. She pointed at the Lin brothers across from her. You. Lin Jun stepped forward with a helpless expression and said, "Miss Ni is injured, and this place is extremely unsafe. How about this, us brothers will escort Miss Ni back to the capital first." Ni Hanji shrieked, You're simply audacious." The maidservant also said angrily, "You actually angered Miss to this extent." Lin Jun and Lin Xiang exchanged glances and walked closer to Ni Hanji. They cupped their hands and said, "Miss Ni, please." Ni Hanji forcefully pushed Lin Jun's arm away, her face so contorted that it was about to split open. If she could kill with her gaze right now, Lin Jun and Lin Xiang probably would have been killed countless times by Ni Hanji. The resentment in her heart nearly accumulated into a vast ocean, and she coldly turned to look in Arbor's direction. The latter only glanced back at her indifferently. It was obvious that he didn't care about her at all. Ni Hanji clenched her fists and had just charged forward 2 steps when the maidservant firmly grabbed her hand. Mississippi, the maidservant wasn't stupid. She originally sought out the Lin brothers to help Miss, but now she saw that she couldn't move them. If Miss rushed forward herself, it was no different from walking right into a trap. She was bound to be humiliated by that icy stoic face again. Ni Hanji secretly gritted her teeth. Although she was unwilling, it was clear that she simply couldn't beat that stoic face. In the end, she could only give up and say with a contorted expression, "Return first." She would think of a countermeasure after returning. This matter couldn't be resolved so easily. She, Ni Hanji, had suffered such a huge loss, so how could she let the stoic face have it easy by himself? Her venomous gaze stared at Arbor's back, and she shifted her gaze back with difficulty. Just as she was about to leave, she saw the little stoic take 2 steps before abruptly turning her head around, her cold and severe eyes locking onto her figure. "It looks like you still want to continue making trouble for me." The little stoic's voice was endlessly eerie. Hearing this, everyone present shuddered in unison. Lin Jun knew he was in trouble. He raised his hand and was about to grab Ni Hanji when he suddenly heard the sound of a whip. Slap. His left hand was slapped back. Originally, I would have spared you this time out of consideration for your esteemed master, Sir Hewen. The little stoic coldly stared at her and said, but an idiot is an idiot. Since you don't care about your life, then die. Everyone was speechless. Arbor thought to himself, who knows what kind of trouble he'll cause in the future if we leave this disaster behind. Recently, things had been very chaotic. She had wholeheartedly wanted to deal with Tian Yun and uncover the rats that Tian Yun had hidden in the various aristocratic families. How could she have the time to deal with a small character like Ni Hanji? Rather than letting this person endlessly prance around in front of her, it would be better to deal with her once and for all. Seeing that she was about to kill, the two brothers, Lin Jun and Lin Xiang, had no choice but to brace themselves and step forward. They cupped their hands and said, "Please forgive us." Ni Hanji simply didn't dare to believe that Arbor wasn't done beating her up and wanted to kill her now. Chapter 4193. Her expression twisted as she shrieked, "Do you want to make an enemy out of Medicine King Island? So what if I do?" Arbor looked at her coldly, the vine whip in his hand glowing with a green light. Dark thorns grew and sprouted one by one. Ni Hanji shouted angrily, "How dare you ah!" Before she could finish her sentence, she fell to the ground in fright from a flash of cold light. Ni Hanji looked back and saw a small blue nail nailed to the ground on the left. The weeds on the ground withered and turned into fine powder in less than a second. It was obvious how terrifying the poison on the nail was. Her small fingers curled up as if they were twitching, and her body stiffly shifted backward. Her eyes were filled with terror as she looked at Xiao Mu, who was coldly gazing down at her from a high vantage point. At this moment, she suddenly felt like death was closing in. Why was she in such a sorry state? Lin Jun was just about to rush forward when Arbor's vine whip whipped him back. "The two of you better mind your own business," Mo Lien said coldly. Following the clanging of swords leaving their sheaths, Lin Jun and Lin Xiang silently looked at each other. Looking at the dozens of black-clothed youths surrounding them, they could only take 2 steps back. It wasn't that they didn't want to help Miss Ni Hanji, but the other side had too many people. They couldn't help even if they wanted to. Arbor looked coldly at the kneeling Ni Hanji for a long time before saying faintly, "Kill her." She had no interest in being entangled with her any longer. Rather than having to deal with this woman in the future, it was easier to just kill her and end it all. The hatred in the other party's eyes couldn't be ignored. If she kept this hatred and allowed it to grow, who knew what would happen in the future? The two accompanying black-clothed youths nodded and leaped up, holding their swords as they walked in front of Ni Hanji. She heard a panting voice calling out anxiously, "Please, please have mercy on me. Crown Princess, Your Highness the Crown Prince, please, please show mercy." A white-bearded, white-haired, green-robed elder hurriedly squeezed through the crowd and hurriedly bowed to Mo Lien and Arbor. Arbor was startled. His expression was a little complicated as he dodged to the side. He did not accept his greeting. Hewen said anxiously, "My disciple is willful and reckless, and has a willful temperament. It's all my fault for not being strict enough in my daily supervision. This old man is willing to accept the punishment on behalf of my disciple. Please forgive me, Master." Ni Hanji stamped her feet and cried out anxiously, "Shut up." Hewen turned his head and glared at her with an expression that said, "I'll deal with you later." Looking at his anxious expression, Arbor's eyes rippled as if 2 tiny ripples had appeared in the depths of his pupils. Mo Lien had been looking down at Jojo the whole time. When she saw her expression, she couldn't help but wonder what was on her mind. Jojo's originally cold expression seemed to have softened quite a bit. Arbor's thoughts had drifted far away, as if he had returned to his childhood. That day, a friend of the old sect master's brought his grandson to visit. In the end, the little stoic got into a fight with this stinky brat when the old sect master's friend saw his grandson beaten black and blue, looking like he had suffered a loss. He was instantly enraged and wanted to punish her. At that time, Murong Sun also stood in front of him with a grin like this and blocked that person's hand with a wave of her hand. It's this peak master's fault for not being strict enough with my disciples. I'm the one who should be punished. Why did you hit my disciple? Jojo. Jojo. Chapter 4194. When Mo Yen saw her standing there silently with glittering eyes, he couldn't help but feel a bit anxious. Thinking that she was bewitched again, he hastily shook her body. On the side, young Master Omega Kotoku harumphed coldly. Eldest Qin involuntarily turned his head to look at him. What is it? You think she's bewitched all day long, but you don't help her completely eradicate it. Young Master Omega Kotoku sneered. Something will happen sooner or later. Eldest Qin sighed and unhurriedly waved the folding fan in his hand. You can't be too hasty with this kind of thing, right? Could it be that second brother knows why the little stoic is constantly bewitched? When the little stoic really flared up, she really didn't look like a living person. Her eyes were lifeless, and it really made people feel a bit uncomfortable just looking at her. Young Master Omega Kotoku abruptly turned his head and coldly spat out 2 words from between his teeth, I don't know. Jojo. Mo Yen shook the little fellow, causing her to recover from her daze. Raising her head to glance at him, the little stoic meaningfully revealed 2 tiny teeth. I'm fine. She said softly and turned to look at the group of men in black waiting with swords in hand, waiting to act on orders. She shook her head and said, let them go. This time, even eldest young Master Qin couldn't help but look at her strangely. This little stoic, she wasn't someone who would casually waver. Just as he was about to say something, he saw Arbor waving his hand and already leading Mo Yen away. Ao Yi and the others naturally sheathed their swords and hastily followed. Mo Yen looked back and coldly gazed at the woman standing there with trembling legs and a half-bent waist. Arbor grabbed his hand at once and pulled him back. She looked up at her husband and lightly shook her head. Mo Yen raised his sword-like eyebrows and nodded reluctantly. Ni Hanji didn't know that she had just rolled around in a sea of fire. How could the little stoic not know the Crown Prince's thoughts? She was soft-hearted, but that didn't mean that the Crown Prince would be soft-hearted. The Crown Prince would often deal with the aftermath, including Ni Hanji, who might cause trouble. She was definitely within the Crown Prince's dangerous range. Jojo, what did you see just now? Mo Yen asked softly. Arbor was silent for a moment before quietly saying, I saw Murong Sun. I even saw the old sect master squatting at the side with his palm leaf fan, looking like he was watching a good show as he called out, Ah Sun, don't fight with sect master Zhao. Old man Zhao, you bastard. How can you still be so narrow-minded after so many years? You're hitting my disciple, ouch. Ah Sun, don't hit old Zhao, his old bones can't withstand your torment. Mo Yen pulled the little fellow into her embrace and lightly patted her back. She lowered her head and smiled at her. We haven't returned to the Holy Water sect for a long time. Let's turn back and take a look. If my master was still alive, I definitely wouldn't be like Miss Ni and cause trouble for my master everywhere, Arbor said in a low voice. My Jojo is the most sensible. Arbor nodded. I'm very obedient. When Peak Master Murong wakes up, we'll accompany her to tour the mountains and rivers of the Divine Province. What's wrong with that? The little stoic's eyes instantly brightened, as if a gorgeous color had been injected into them. Ming Province's Crown Prince and the others are coming over, someone shouted. Everyone looked up and saw Ming Yasi and his group quickly walking over while escorting over 1,000 old, weak, and sick people. Ming Yasi raised his brows when he saw the little stoic. Why are your eyes red? Chapter 4195. Xiao Mu was unwilling to acknowledge him and turned her small head away at the first instance. It's none of your business. Mo Yen retorted in annoyance. She pulled her wifey and headed toward the city lord manor. Yasi harumphed and turned to catch up with them. Did you make her angry? Shut up. Mo Lien turned around to glare at him. She didn't want to talk to him, but she couldn't help but raise her brows when she saw the old, weak, sick, and disabled following behind him. We've already checked their bodies. Can you be sure they haven't been poisoned? When the time came, they would have to evacuate the rest of the people. If there were some uncontrollable people in the group who could mutate and go on a rampage at any time, things would be a little difficult. After all, they couldn't keep an eye on so many people along the way. It was inevitable that they would overlook something. Once a riot broke out, it would only affect the lowest rung of society, the ordinary people with no cultivation at all. Ming Yasi also wasn't willing to talk to Mo Lien, so he harumphed and retorted, who can guarantee that? We can only take things one step at a time. I have a kind of medicinal liquid here. Arbor suddenly spoke up. You can try it. Yasi turned to look at her, his eyes brightening. You're talking to me? Mo Lien chuckled at that person and pulled Arbor away. She asked in a low voice, what do we need to prepare? 15 minutes later, everyone who had been brought back stood in front of the city lord manor. There were more than 10,000 commoners, and all of them looked exhausted. Yasi ordered them to line up in a square formation. More than 10 wash basins were arranged neatly in front of them. The wash basins were filled with a green medicinal liquid that looked very clear and bright, with a gentle color. Now, everyone in the first row, come forward and wash your hands in the wash basins. The row of people walked forward nervously and squatted down to put their hands in the wash basins. They felt a gentle stream of water pass through their palms, and they couldn't help but feel energized. In less than 2 seconds, Mayas had them line up behind him. Although the onlookers didn't know what was going on, they vaguely understood that as long as nothing happened when they washed their hands, they could stand behind these practitioners and go to a safe place. Everyone came forward with a trace of panic and fear, and then were brought back to Arbor and the others in groups in high spirits and rearranged in a square formation. Suddenly, in the third basin, the originally light green medicinal liquid suddenly boiled up, revealing a trace of a strange black color. The faces of the guards on both sides suddenly changed as they pulled out the sharp blades in their hands. The old woman squatting in front of the basin was obviously shocked by their actions. She knelt on the ground and held a 5 or 6-year-old child tightly in one hand. The child was so frightened that he immediately burst into tears. Arbor quickly walked over and waved his hand to dismiss the 2 guards with swords and sabers. His eyes were filled with complex emotions as he stared at the old woman before him. Isolate him first. The old woman looked back at him in panic and exclaimed, "What are you doing? You are bullying the good people." Arbor shook his head slightly and said faintly, "It's not her, it's that child." Everyone stilled when they heard this. Chapter 4196. The old woman grew even more flustered as she hugged her grandson tightly. She glared furiously at Arbor. What are you trying to do?" Arbor stared at her coldly for a good while before sighing softly. If this child isn't suppressed with medicine soon, he'll turn into a zombie in less than an hour. When the time comes, who will bear the consequences? Granny, you hid your grandson in the crowd. You're irresponsible to yourself, and you're equally irresponsible to others. The old woman shuddered. She wanted to speak, but when she met Arbor's cold gaze, she shrank back. But soon, she grabbed her grandson's arm again. She stared at Ao Yi and his men in horror and shouted, "Don't come here. You can't kill my grandson. He's still young. He's still young. You can't." This old woman. Ming Yasi's eyes flashed with impatience as he roared, "No one here wants to kill your grandson. Didn't you hear me just now? If this child of yours isn't suppressed by medicine, he'll mutate." The old woman heard clearly this time. She looked at Arbor's group with trembling eyes. Why you can really save my grandson? Ming Yasi didn't seem to want to answer the old woman's superfluous question. He merely sneered and waved his hand to have the old woman and child carried away. Then he said coldly, I hope you won't waste our time. I'm sure anyone with eyes can see what the situation is like right now. I hope those of you who have been lightly injured or bitten by zombies will step forward on your own accord. As soon as these words came out, many people's faces showed slight panic. Ming Yasi said, the apothecaries in the group can suppress the zombie poison in some of you. If you don't step forward now, don't blame us for treating you as despicable and shameless people who deliberately hid the truth. We'll throw you out here for good. When he said this, everyone became even more nervous. In the subsequent tests, everyone was extremely cautious. Their hands touched the surface of the water, and they didn't dare to stay there for long. They immediately withdrew their hands. Ming Yasi couldn't resist using his eyes to size up the little stoic standing not far away, and a strange look appeared in the depths of his eyes. You can measure it so quickly. Arbor glanced at him, nodded, and turned to tug at her husband's hand. Mo Lien threw a cold glance at Ming Yasi and said indifferently, I'll leave this place to you. What did he mean by handing it over to him? Ming Yasi's eyes turned fierce as he took a few steps forward. He was about to argue with Mo Lien again when he heard a cry of alarm from the side. Your Highness, this is bad. This man is starting to mutate. Dark Yas turned his head and saw that a small area in front of him had started to become chaotic. His gaze turned even colder as he reprimanded angrily, What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and disperse them. Don't panic. Continue to test the remaining people with the liquid. Don't try to fish in troubled waters. In the end, Divine Province and Ming Province each brought back 2,000 or so people from Jiawei City in batches. The remaining people would be brought back by the 4 great cities for consumption. Arbor and Mo Lien didn't bring so many people back to the capital. Instead, they sent other people to settle down these miserable commoners. The duo arrived at the capital a day later. Chapter 4197. The first news he received was that Empress Dowager Chen, who had gone to Mount Heaven Saint to fast and pray, had been carried back. Yes, she was carried back. It was said that this old lady began to fall ill as soon as she arrived at Mount Heaven Saint. After a serious illness, her entire body was emaciated, as if she could be blown away by the wind. She was very miserable and pitiful. King Jianping submitted a memorial, saying in a tearful voice that he must bring back the Empress Dowager to show his filial piety. He said that the Empress Dowager was old. If she lived in the mausoleum all year round, she would inevitably be contaminated with the aura of death, which was naturally not good for her body. Moreover, from ancient times until now, Jianping had done his homework. He had listed countless acts of filial piety by emperors, generals, and ministers, and earnestly persuaded Mo Luxing to be filial and conform to the way of the emperor. Thus, Mo Luxing couldn't bear the annoyance and really brought the old lady back. But once he brought her back, Mo Luxing directly sent the old lady to King Jianping's residence, asking King Jianping to take good care of the Empress Dowager on his behalf. King Jianping, who had secretly received a large sum of money from Empress Dowager Chen and was counting the spirit coins happily, was a little dumbfounded on the spot. Indeed, he had said that in the way of filial piety, he should take good care of the Empress Dowager. He had even written a long speech in front of His Majesty. But damn, he had never said that he wanted to bring Empress Dowager Chen back to live in his residence. He wasn't someone who had nothing to do and liked to court death as much as he liked. What kind of good days could there be if he brought Empress Dowager Chen, this great Buddha, into his residence? He didn't expect that he actually found himself an old lady to take care of at home. Don't you think His Majesty is a fraud? As for the second news that Arbor and Mo Lien received. On the second day after all of them withdrew from Jiawei City was occupied by an unknown force. Now, the entire city was filled with rotting corpse puppets. They were like the guards of this city, pacing back and forth, letting out sensational roars from time to time. Arbor was only silent for a moment before saying, Tianyun has a base on the surface. It will be slightly more convenient for us to deal with it in the future. Mo Lien smiled and nodded. Don't worry about this. Running back and forth is torturous. Let's rest for today. If there's anything, we can talk about it tomorrow. Arbor looked at her and nodded. Bathe together? Arbor nodded again. Mo Lien's eyes lit up when he heard this. He stepped forward and hugged his wife. Let's go. The next day, the crown prince was summoned to the imperial study by His Majesty early in the morning. The father and son spent the whole morning talking about Jiawei City. We can only do this for now. Mo Lushing said with a frown. In the past, Tianyun was in the dark while we were in the light. We were always on the defensive. Mo Lushing patted Mo Lien's shoulder and said in a low voice, now that they are in the open, it will be easier to deal with them in the future. As the two of them were talking, a young eunuch reported, Your Majesty, Your Highness the Crown Prince. The Crown Princess sent someone to inform the Crown Prince that she has been invited to King Jianpei's mansion. Mo Lushing couldn't help but twitch his mouth, thinking, is Jianpei seeking death again? He turned back to look at his son. Sure enough, he saw that the latter's handsome face was already covered with dark clouds. He hurriedly said, why don't you go back and take a look first? Mo Lien naturally had to go back. She walked out with a sullen face, turning a deaf ear to the great emperor's muttering, don't scare your little uncle. Chapter 4198. She scared the old king of Jianpei. Of course he was scared. When he heard a servant report that the crown princess's carriage had already arrived at the entrance, the old king of Jianpei's hand trembled, and the half-cup of hot tea directly spilled onto the ground. Fuck, why would this great Buddha suddenly grace his king of Jianpei's estate with her presence? It wasn't that he was a coward, but he had suffered at the hands of this little ancestor time and time again. After being tricked by her, he wouldn't seek abuse for no reason. The old king of Jianpei practically roared, who invited her here? The servant replied with trepidation, Her Majesty the Empress Dowager said that she wants to see Her Majesty the Crown Princess. The old king of Jianpei slapped his forehead, instantly looking like he was about to faint. He wanted to say something, but a cold and clear voice sounded by his ear. What, does the king of Jianpei not welcome this crown princess? The old king of Jianpei's lips trembled. He really wanted to retort, so what if I don't welcome you? But when he opened his mouth, a flattering voice that even he found hard to believe came out. Ha ha ha, how could that be? The crown princess has graced us with her presence. My humble abode shines with light, my humble abode shines with light. Arbor glanced at him, then his gaze landed on Mo Kuan, who was sitting upright and kneeling beside a small table with a teacup in his hands. How have you been, king of Jianpei's heir? Mo Kuan, king of Jianpei's heir, revealed a smile that he believed to be handsome and incomparably confident and at ease. He nodded and said, Thank you for your concern, Crown Princess. Mo Kuan has been doing well recently. The little Crown Princess snorted coldly. She turned around and saw a servant girl dressed in a green servant's uniform hastily crossing the hall to greet them. Greetings, Crown Princess. Greetings, Your Highness and the heir. Your Highness, this servant is here on Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's order to invite the Crown Princess to the small garden. The old king of Jianpei forcefully restrained his expression that was about to change and nodded calmly. May I know why the Empress Dowager summoned the Crown Princess? The little girl lowered her head and said very appropriately, the Empress Dowager didn't say, so we didn't dare to ask. At this moment, the old king of Jianpei wished he could whip the old woman and throw her into a frying pan. If you want to cause trouble for the Crown Princess, why do you have to cause trouble in my mansion? Just how bored must you be to do something like this? The little crown princess stared deeply at the little girl who was bowing in front of her. After a while, the girl felt cold sweat dripping down her forehead. The crown princess suddenly said softly, "Lead the way." The moment she opened her mouth, the little girl felt the pressure on her suddenly disappear. She couldn't help but let out a long sigh. She didn't dare to act rashly and bowed respectfully in front of Arbor. "Crown Princess, please." When he turned around and led the little crown princess out the door, the little girl couldn't help but clench her fists under her sleeves and quicken her pace nervously. After a while, the entire hall was filled with a deathly stillness. The maids and servants stood on both sides with lowered eyes. They naturally didn't dare to make a sound at this time to anger their master. The old king of Giant Pain finally clapped his hands angrily. "What are you still standing there for? Go to the Eastern Palace and inform His Highness the Crown Prince. That brat better not think that I invited his wife. He didn't want to experience the virtues of those two black-bellied bastards again." Turning to look at Mo Cohen, who was still kneeling in front of the table and unmoving like a mountain, the king of Giant Pain couldn't help but feel angry. "What are you still sitting there for? Hurry up and scram into the palace to find your elder brother." "Woo-woo, royal father, my legs are weak." Royal father couldn't tell that he wasn't kneeling, but directly kneeling. "I've been busy these 2 days and I'm not in good spirits." Chapter 4199. Mo Cohen was at a loss for words, feeling extremely aggrieved. Did she think he wanted to do this? He truly felt fearful for no reason after seeing the little crown princess. It was as if someone had struck the depths of his soul, and he inexplicably ordered his body to know its place. Boo-hoo, he didn't want to be so cowardly either, but what could he do? From what he could see, his old father didn't seem to be able to be tough with that person either. The old king of Giant Pain was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. He anxiously stomped his feet and pointed at the 2 page boys. "Why aren't you helping the heir up? Ah, Cohen, hurry into the palace and explain this matter to your elder brother. Explain it clearly." Of course, this matter had to be explained clearly. If the crown prince misunderstood and thought that their king of Giant Pain's mansion didn't like the crown princess and invited her over to cause trouble, wouldn't that be an undeserved calamity? Mo Cohen's face was bitter, and his expression was somewhat conflicted. "Royal father, can I not go?" His old father himself was afraid of the crown prince, so he sent his son. However, his son, Mo Cohen, also felt fearful when he saw the crown prince for no reason. It would be best if they didn't meet if they could. Mo Cohen looked at the old king of Giant Pain, his expression saying, "Don't screw your son over." The old king of Giant Pain was furious, and he kicked his son down the steps from the small table. Mo Cohen's face was bitter as he scrambled toward the door. Seeing that his old father was about to kick him again, he hurriedly shouted, I'll go, can't I go?" The old king of Giant Pain shouted in exasperation, "Hurry up and prepare the carriage for the heir. Hurry up." He kicked his son's butt again, kicking Mo Cohen out of the central room. Mo Cohen crawled up from the ground and fled outside like a fleeing rabbit. He ran out in tears, feeling aggrieved and pitiful. While the king of Giant Pain's mansion was in a state of chaos, the little crown princess followed the steps in the back garden of the king of Giant Pain's mansion under the guidance of a maid. As the late emperor's youngest son, the king of Giant Pain was used to complaining about being poor and extorting benefits in front of his older brothers. Along the way to King Giant Pain's mansion, there were clusters of flowers and brocade, richly ornamented beams and painted rafters, and golden-colored glazed roofs that shone brightly under the sunlight. How could he be as poor as the old prince of Giant Pain who cried outside? The little girl who was leading the way had her neck shrunk and her back arched, looking very cautious. Although she looked thin and small, her speed was not slow. Along the way, Arbor's lips were filled with mockery. She wanted to see what kind of tricks this Empress Dowager Chen had up her sleeves after finally coming back from Mount Heaven Saint. She was not Lien's father. A cold light flashed in Arbor's eyes, revealing a bit of killing intent. She had already tolerated the Empress Dowager, who disliked her in every way and always wanted to find trouble with her. Her patience had run out. The little girl in front of him suddenly stopped in her tracks and looked around. She revealed a bewildered expression at the right moment. There were a few drops of sweat on her forehead, which glowed faintly under the faint sunlight. "My apologies," the little girl said with trepidation. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager was indeed here before. Now she should have returned to her bedchamber. "Why don't the Crown Princess wait here for a moment? I will go to Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's residence to invite her." Arbor did not hesitate to fling a vine whip over and wrap it around the girl's waist. Chapter 4200. The little girl's expression changed slightly, and she hastily turned to look at Arbor. "Crown Princess, why are you doing this?" Arbor gazed at her apathetically. "This Crown Princess will follow you over to pay respects to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. There's no need to go through so much trouble." When she said the word pay respects, the little girl felt that the little stoic's voice was extremely icy for some reason. She shuddered for no reason, and her entire body inexplicably shuddered along with her. "What?" Arbor stared at her icily. "Do you still need to think carefully about where the Queen Dowager's bedchamber is?" The little girl shuddered for no reason. She instantly realized something when she saw the trace of mockery hanging on that stoic face. She was afraid that the Crown Prince Consort had already seen through her little trick. But that was to be expected. The Crown Princess was originally an exceptionally intelligent person. Her little trick was clearly not enough in front of the Crown Princess. Who could she blame? She could only blame herself for being inferior. If she had been a bit faster just now and Qingong had shaken her off, he could have escaped by himself and left her here. There wouldn't be any problems or troubles. In that case, she might have to initiate another plan. The little girl took a deep breath and suddenly reached out to press it to her lips. However, before she could whistle, she felt pain on her fingertips. His face was filled with horror as he looked down, only to see two severed fingers falling to the ground. Blood gushed out, and the girl's complexion instantly paled. She was on the verge of collapsing. Xiao Mu twirled the glowing dagger in her hand as she stared at her frostily with a pair of chilly eyes. After a long while, she said, "Did you think that the fragrant powder scattered in this garden combined with the bewildering fragrance on your lapel would make me delirious after a long time?" The little girl couldn't help but shudder violently. Her eyes widened in shock as she stared at her in disbelief. It was as if Arbor had said something that made her feel extremely terrified. "Wishful thinking," Arbor said coldly. He glanced at the winding forest at the side. With a cry of surprise, a black figure was kicked out. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal smiled as he waved the small golden fan in his hand. However, his eyes were extremely cold. "Jojo, I caught a peeping Tom." Arbor's gaze fell on the black figure. He saw that it was a man in his early 20s, with oily hair and a powdered face. However, his shifty eyes kept darting back and forth in their sockets as they stared at Xiao Mu. Arbor asked coldly, "Who is this person?" The small garden was naturally quiet at this moment. The little girl, whose waist was wrapped by Arbor's wooden vines, didn't dare to speak. The man in his early 20s didn't dare to speak carelessly. Arbor said indifferently, "It doesn't matter if you don't want to talk. Search his soul." The girl looked at her in horror, her expression completely blank. She probably didn't expect that there would be such an arrogant person in this world. He proposed to search someone's soul just because of a disagreement. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal smiled and reached out to press the girl's head. The girl cried out in panic, "No, you can't kill me. You can't ah." She screamed in horror and hurriedly roared, I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. It's the young master of the Chen family. Chen, the young master of the Chen family's branch family. Madame wanted to frame the crown princess. She found this young master of the Qin family to fabricate the truth. Chapter 4201. Using some catalyzing drugs to create the illusion that the crown princess and young master Chen are having an affair. Before she could finish, the venerable peach blossom immortal slapped her across the face. How dare you? Ma Shichen looked at the girl in disgust. At this moment, Xiao Mu had already kicked the ashen-faced young master Chen to the ground. Her small foot stepped on the young master's face, ruthlessly rolling it around. Her eyes were filled with endless mockery. This brainless Empress Dowager was playing this kind of trick on her. It seemed that she had lived too comfortably in the harem for so long that she had completely forgotten what kind of world this was. A weakling dared to take advantage of her and wanted to teach her a lesson. Very well. At the same time, Empress Dowager Chen, who was eating seasonal fruits in her bedroom and enjoying the service of a palace maid, was leisurely leaning on the brocade couch. She was in a good mood and squinted her eyes slightly. She did not want to be so extreme, but that crown princess was too much of an eyesore. She blocked her way and was disobedient. She even took the position of Mo Lian's official wife and was not willing to give way to others. She ate the meat herself and did not even give others a drop of soup. Was there such a logic? Since that was the case, she could not be blamed for going all out and not showing any mercy. Empress Dowager Chen thought of the comfortable days to come and could not help but smile as she picked up a grape on the table. Just as she was about to put it into her mouth, she heard a loud bang. The door of her dormitory fell inwards with a loud bang, smashing into the ground with a loud bang. Empress Dowager Chen's fingers, which were holding the grape, froze. A slender red figure flew in and barged in. Outside, a thunder of drought came at the perfect moment. Boom! The eunuchs and palace maids kneeling by the Empress Dowager's feet all looked over in shock. Empress Dowager Crown Princess. At that moment, the little crown princess was dressed in a red battle robe. Under the thunderous drought, she looked particularly dazzling. Her snow-white face was expressionless. When she stared at the Empress Dowager, the latter shuddered unexpectedly. She felt like she was facing an evil spirit that had climbed up from the depths of hell. The little crown princess did not give them much time to react. She quickly walked forward and pulled Empress Dowager Chen off the fragrant brocade couch. She grabbed Empress Dowager Chen's long hair and dragged her out of the door like she was dragging a broom. Everyone was speechless. A eunuch reacted and screamed, "Empress Dowager." When the young crown prince consort turned around to glare at him coldly, he immediately shut his mouth and obediently knelt at the side without moving. The Empress Dowager was rudely dragged from the couch to the floor. At this moment, because she was indoors, she was not wearing her outer garment, her duda was half undone, and her undergarments were in disarray. However, she was forced to drag the young crown prince consort out the door. Empress Dowager Chen's eyes were filled with flames of anger. She felt her mind go blank as she lost control of her emotions and screamed out loud. "What are you doing? Crown Princess! You are truly audacious. How dare you? How dare you treat Aijia like this? Do you still have Aijia and the previous emperor in your eyes?" Arbor raised her hand and slapped Empress Dowager Chen's face that was covered in thick makeup. A sense of joy immediately rose in his heart. This damn woman, she had wanted to teach her a lesson for a long time. Chapter 4202. Did she really think that she, Xiao Mu, was a punching bag that would allow her to knead as she pleased, playing the dirty tricks of the palace all day long? Did she think that she, Arbor, was like those older sisters in the imperial harem who were defeated by her? Did she think that she could ruin her reputation and even earn Lian's disdain by using such unconventional tricks? Today, she wanted her to know the consequences of offending her, Arbor. When she thought of this, Arbor's hands didn't stop as she continued to drag the screaming Empress Dowager Chen towards the original small garden. She wanted to make things difficult for her again, right? Ha! Could the Prince of Giantpain not hear the Empress Dowager's screams? But did he dare to provoke the young Crown Princess? Ha! The Empress Dowager and the Crown Princess didn't go back to the palace to fight, but insisted on fighting in his Prince of Giantpain's residence. Who would believe him? The old Prince of Giantpain suddenly felt that his life was full of bitterness and despair. His heart was in turmoil. Hurry and send someone to the palace to see if that brat Mo Kuan managed to invite His Highness the Crown Prince. Your Highness, your wife has gone crazy. Hurry and stop her. The old Prince of Giantpain didn't know yet. It was definitely a wise move for him to be terrified and not dare to come over to check. If he dared to interfere, Sir Jojo would definitely beat him up without a second word. Arbor didn't care if this old woman was about to die from being dragged by her all the way. She didn't have any pity for the fairer sex as she threw her onto the uneven dirt path in the garden. Empress Dowager Chen sat limply on the ground. Her hairpins were all messed up, her hair was disheveled, and her face was completely pale. That servant girl was originally tied to the side with wooden vines by Hu Jinchen. When she saw that the Empress Dowager was being dragged over by the young Crown Princess like a rag, she was immediately scared out of her wits. She struggled to free her hands that were tied behind her back and shouted sternly, "You, what do you want to do? What are you doing?" Arbor coldly glanced at them. His eyes were cold and indifferent, without the slightest bit of warmth. Such a bone-chilling gaze made Empress Dowager Chen's entire body tremble. Her heart was in a mess and she had a feeling that today was going to be bad. "Crown Princess, you need to calm down." Empress Dowager Chen still wanted to say something to comfort the scary little Crown Princess. However, Arbor did not allow her to continue. He raised his hand and sprinkled a handful of powder on the three of them. "Enjoy it," she said coldly before pulling He Chen away. Empress Dowager Chen's eyes changed as she looked at young Master Chen who was crawling towards her while drooling. She finally shouted out in panic, Don't come over. You, what are you doing? Stop. You stand." Xiao Mu had purposely used a barrier to conceal the area where they were doing their work. This way, as long as she did not move away, no one would be blind enough to come and disturb the three of them. There was a hidden cold light in her eyes. When she returned to the King of Giantpain's residence with He Chen, they saw the old King of Giantpain walking over with an uneasy expression. Crown Princess, what instructions does the Empress Dowager have?" Arbor took the tea from the servant and expressionlessly glanced at the King of Giantpain. "I didn't meet the Empress Dowager at all. King of Giantpain, it was you who sneakily used the Queen Dowager's name to deliberately lure this Crown Prince Consort here." Xiao Mu's small, solemn face abruptly changed on a whim. Chapter 4203. She slapped the armrest of the old Prince of Giantpain's large carved hardwood chair, causing a neat piece to fall off. The little stoic glared angrily at him with a frosty face. "Prince of Giantpain, are you trying to pick a quarrel and stir up trouble? Do you want compensation again? Do you know the consequences of deceiving this Crown Princess?" The old Prince of Giantpain's mouth twitched as he looked at the piece of wood that had fallen to the ground. He hastily bowed and begged for forgiveness, repeatedly claiming that he didn't dare. He kept crying injustice and was just short of cursing and swearing to the heavens and earth. "Royal father, royal father, royal father." Mo Kuan ran in joyously and saw his royal father standing cowardly in front of the little Crown Princess, gesticulating about who knew what the hell he was talking about. Mo Kuan's eyelid twitched. He heard the little Crown Princess ask crisply expressionlessly, "You mean, the Queen Dowager really is in your estate?" Yes, it's absolutely true." The old Prince of Giantpain nodded repeatedly and volunteered, "Crown Princess, I can bring you there." "Royal father." Mo Kuan couldn't resist interrupting, "The Crown Prince is already at our estate's entrance with his people." What? The old prince of Giant Pain was startled, but he immediately revealed a joyous expression and hastily strode out the door. Good, good, good. Then us father and son will go to the front door to welcome His Highness the Crown Prince. No need. An indifferent voice appeared at the entrance and blew to the little stoic's side like a gust of wind. Mo Lien grabbed his wife's small hand and sized her up from head to toe. He only sighed in relief after seeing that she was fine. He turned to glance at the Prince of Giant Pain and his son before pulling Arbor's hand and quietly grumbling, "Jojo, why do you come whenever someone comes to find you? There's no need to pay attention to some strange people." The old Prince of Giant Pain rubbed his nose. The Queen Dowager used his Prince of Giant Pain estate's name to send an invitation to the Crown Princess. Then this strange person must be referring to him. The old King of Giant Pain didn't dare to retort back. He could only feel slightly aggrieved in his heart. With a pitiful voice, he retorted, "The Empress Dowager issued an imperial decree. I can't do anything about it." Prince Mo gritted his teeth as he held his wife's hand and asked, "Jojo, did that woman make things difficult for you?" There was no such thing. Not only was there no such thing, she was the one who had turned the tables and given her a taste of her own medicine, making things difficult for her. Thinking of the current situation in the garden, the little crown princess couldn't help but reveal a look of disdain on her cold little face. Mo Lien had been paying attention to her the whole time, and the slight changes on her face naturally couldn't escape her eyes. His Jojo seemed to be in a good mood. "Where is the Empress Dowager?" Mo Lien asked coldly. Today, he was going to make it clear to this old woman that his wife was not someone who could be taught by just any Tom, Dick or Harry. The old Prince of Giant Pain took it upon himself to lead the way, leading everyone in the direction of the Empress Dowager's bedchamber. "We'll reach the Empress Dowager after passing through this small garden." "Oh, that's right. Don't look at my garden, it seems to be very expensive. In fact, most of the precious flowers inside were sent over by my elder brothers." The Prince of Giant Pain sneaked a glance at Arbor and continued, "Ever since the last time we gave you, the Crown Princess, a series of compensations, life in the entire Prince of Giant Pain estate has taken a nosedive. It's very difficult." Arbor glanced speechlessly at the old Prince of Giant Pain. Chapter 4204. You can't just look at the surface of this garden and big house to see how precious they are. You have to look at their inner qualities. Most of the antiques in my residence, except for those that eldest brother and second brother gave me which are genuine, the rest are actually fakes. Crown Princess, Your Highness the Crown Prince, I'm really very poor." This fellow's bitter and vengeful gaze made it seem as if Arbor was here to collect debts again. Did she look like someone who wanted to kill them all? Mo Lien's lips twitched without batting an eyelid. "Where's the Empress Dowager's descendant?" "Her bedchamber is just in front." Before the old King of Giant Pain could finish speaking, he seemed to hear a faint, strange sound drifting over from the other side of the flower bed. The little crown princess pulled a long face and instinctively took 2 steps back. Beside her, Hu Shichen turned to look at Mo Lien and revealed a meaningful expression. Mo Lien rolled her eyes at him and reached out to pull his wife to her side. Hugging her, she whispered, "Wife, be careful. There might be something unusual in front." The old King of Giant Pain, Hu Shichen, Mo Kun, being caught off guard and being fed dog food was really terrible. In their eyes, Prince Mo, who was always showing off dog food, was really a little shameless. Especially the old King of Giant Pain, who was fuming with rage. Although his residence wasn't as impregnable as the Imperial Palace, nor was it as strictly managed as Prince Kang's residence, at least it was still passable. What did he mean by there was something unusual? How could there be something unusual? Unusual? The old King of Giant Pain's eyes instantly turned round. He suddenly saw that the small garden in front of him seemed to have opened up. In the flower bed in front, there were 3 white figures twisting together in a very frightening posture. One of them suddenly moved his body and turned his face around. When the old king of Giant Pain saw that face, he was so frightened that he fell to the ground on his butt. He kicked his legs and screamed, "I'm blind, I'm blind." Arbor flipped her hand and took out 2 silver needles. "Here." The old king of Giant Pain looked at her in shock. Was she asking him to stab himself in the eyes? Damn it! This girl was too ruthless. How dare he make the Empress Dowager look like this? The king of Giant Pain had just shivered when he heard the young crown princess's cold and stern voice. "How dare you? How dare you do such a despicable thing in broad daylight?" Prince Mo reacted quickly as well. Although he had never heard his wife say that she would do this, he immediately got into character and started cooperating with her. His face sank, and he said angrily, "Are they all dead? Hurry up and separate them." The disgusting appearance of these 3 people was simply an eyesore. The young crown princess stared coldly at the disheveled woman and sneered, "What are you waiting for? Such a woman who tarnished the previous emperor's reputation naturally has to be executed immediately." Mo Lien then said, "Someone, give her 3 feet of white silk." Everyone, wasn't it a little too fast for the 2 of them to sing and brag? Even if the county magistrate was trying a case, shouldn't he at least have a first trial? "You guys, do you have to deal with the Empress Dowager so quickly and strangely?" Arbor glanced sideways and saw Aoyi jump up with the white silk in his hands. Her eyes immediately twitched. A strange thought flashed through her mind. Could it be that Aoyi carried several strands of white silk with him in his inner world to deal with such sudden situations at any time? Empress Dowager Chen looked at the 2 men in black walking over quickly, and her pupils suddenly shrank. "Let's adjust the time tomorrow. It's estimated to be 4 or 5 in the afternoon." Chapter 4205. Crown Prince. Empress Dowager Chen's powdered old face was ruined by the tears and snot flowing down her face. She was so angry that she was trembling. She pointed a trembling finger at the little crown princess. "It's her." She framed Aijiao. "It's her." "You can't not ask for the reason." Empress Dowager Chen looked in horror at the white silk around her neck and shouted, "Stop, stop." Aijia was dragged out of her bedroom by the crown princess and thrown here. "This bitch planned this ah." Under the crown prince's gaze, Aoyi slapped Empress Dowager Chen's mouth without hesitation. The 2 guards took the white silk from Aoyi's hand and immediately wrapped it around her neck. They pulled the 2 ends and tightened it without any explanation. Arbor looked coldly at the Empress Dowager who was kneeling there with a face full of panic. At this time, this woman didn't have any of her usual graceful and luxurious appearance. She was completely a dirty beggar woman with a sad face from crying. "When did I go to your bedroom?" Arbor's voice was cold. In Empress Dowager Chen's ears, it was especially heartless. "You're the one who is shameless. You messed around with your Chen family's smelly bug and now you dare to open your mouth." Arbor looked coldly at her. Empress Dowager Chen was already choked by the white silk and she couldn't speak. Her old face turned purple. Suddenly, she heard a servant anxiously announce, "Grand Concubine Fong has arrived. Left Prime Minister Chen Chaoji requests an audience." Grand Concubine Fong and Chen Chaoji hurried over. When they saw the scene in the garden, their expressions changed. "Stop!" Grand Concubine Fong shouted in shock. A person immediately jumped out from behind her and threw a dart at the Empress Dowager. It hit the white silk in the middle and directly cut it in half. The 2 guards each held a broken piece of the white silk and suddenly took a step back. Grand Concubine Fong quickly pushed aside the guards in front of her and ran to Empress Dowager Chen. She took a silk robe from a maid and wrapped it around Empress Dowager Chen who was sitting on the ground in a mess. "Empress Dowager." Empress Dowager Chen grabbed old Concubine Fong's hand in tears. "Old concubine, are you here to save me? What the hell is going on?" Old concubine Fong hurriedly turned to look in the direction of Crown Prince. Crown Prince, Empress Dowager is the Emperor's father and your grandmother. How can you? The little stoic expressionlessly interrupted her. Grand Consort Fong, we don't blame you for going up to cause trouble without knowing the reason. However, it's best that you don't interfere in this matter, lest you attract trouble for no reason. You. Grand Concubine Fong was amused by this expressionless crown princess. Look at what he said, he was really not courteous at all. The Empress Dowager shamelessly ruined the reputation of the imperial harem. Messing around with her grandnephew in broad daylight. The Crown Prince said with a cold expression, I'm giving her a death sentence for her sake. Old Concubine Fong's expression suddenly changed. She lowered her head to look at the Empress Dowager, who was wrapped in a silk robe and shivering. Her eyes showed some worry. She had long advised this old sister not to insist on becoming enemies with the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. However, she just didn't listen. Wasn't this a disaster? Even she didn't know what to do next. Chen Chaoji hastily stepped forward and cupped his hands, saying, Your Highness the Crown Prince, Crown Princess. There must be something fishy about this matter. How is it possible for Her Majesty the Empress Dowager? Chen Chaoji's face was pale as he looked at that intoxicated young man who was forced to kneel on the side but still continued to make indecent movements. Chapter 4206. Of course, he recognized this Chen family disciple. But the problem was, no matter how bad the Empress Dowager was, why would she do such a thing with a grandnephew from a side branch? Moreover, it was in broad daylight. Was she that lonely? She must have been wronged. Although Chen Chaoji felt that the Empress Dowager was wronged, he couldn't find any evidence to prove that the Empress Dowager was indeed wronged. Thus, he could only mumble, Your Highness. Your Highness Crown Princess. Mo Lien raised his hand and coldly said, Left Prime Minister, you don't need to quibble for her. This matter concerns the reputation of the royal family. I believe that the Prime Minister must have made a choice. Choice. Chen Chaoji's heart thumped heavily. Empress Dowager Chen knelt there and saw a trace of hesitation and confusion on the face of the Prime Minister's nephew. She couldn't help but angrily shout, No, it's not like what you said. Why aren't you slapping him awake? Slap him awake. Empress Dowager Chen shouted at the two Chen family manservants like a madwoman. When the two Chen family disciples saw this, they wished that they could poke their eyes out and pretend that they didn't see anything. They fearfully took a few steps forward and under the urging of Empress Dowager Chen's cold gaze, they heavily slapped the Chen family's side branch grandnephew's face. The man woke up with a start, only to hear a sharp yell from the front. Qin Qian, tell me honestly, who did you come to the garden to see? Qin Qian's face was blank and he hurriedly said the words that he had already silently repeated hundreds of times, This lowly one is here to see the Crown Princess. The Crown Princess arranged for this lowly one to meet here, Arbor sneered. Empress Dowager Chen hurriedly crawled forward and glared at Mo Lien with a twisted face, Did you hear that? Listen ah. Mo Lien ruthlessly kicked her to the ground, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood with a wah. You. Empress Dowager Chen's expression changed. She didn't expect that Mo Lien wouldn't care about her face at all. The little Crown Princess glanced at Qin Qian, who was trembling on the ground, with a look of disdain. Then, she threw herself into Mo Lien's arms. The latter naturally reached out and hugged her, raising his hand to caress the back of her head. Arbor turned his little head and stared at Empress Dowager Chen as if he was looking at a corpse. After a while, he said sarcastically, You're crazy. I'm not as crazy as the Empress Dowager, who would come to an unfamiliar Jianping mansion for a rendezvous for no reason. Furthermore, the Empress Dowager wants to frame this Crown Princess. Can you please find a more decent man? The little Crown Princess did not hide the disdain on her face. She raised her head and reached out to grab Mo Lien's chin. She lifted it up slightly and turned to look at the Empress Dowager sarcastically. Am I crazy? I don't want my husband, who is like a flower, and I want this broken thing beside you. The flower-like husband silently lowered his eyes, blinked, and glanced at his little wife. It's you, Empress Dowager. You're already so old. You've been buried deep in the palace all day, so you've already withered. That's why you're so desperate and can pull in any kind of ghost for nourishment. Ha! Chen Chaoji trembled. He felt that the little crown princess's words were extremely vicious, but he couldn't find any words to refute it. How did the Chen family produce a woman like you? The little crown princess said in a cold voice, a cold light flashing in her eyes. Unwilling to be left out, so shameless. What are you guys still standing there for? Send her on her way. No, no. I want to see who dares to stop me. Chapter 4207. The little stoic shouted coldly, and her chilly gaze circled around before landing on Grand Consort Fang's face. Grand Consort Fang only felt her body tremble slightly, and she hastily blocked Queen Dowager Chen with her arms. She earnestly advised, Crown Princess, the Queen Dowager is indeed in the wrong in this matter. But she's an old person in the palace after all. It's inevitable that she'll be a bit muddle-headed when she gets older. She didn't think things through and went into a dead end. What nonsense. Arbor coldly gazed at Grand Consort Fang and rudely interrupted her. Even if the Heavenly Emperor came today, he wouldn't be able to save her. Do it. Yes. Ao Yi simply brought 2 royal guards and personally went forward to twist the white silk. Earlier on, the 2 broken pieces of white silk had been thrown onto the ground by him. Now, he had taken out a new piece of it. As expected, Ao Ye's inner world was filled with quite a few pieces of white silk. Chen Chaoji hastily knelt down and kowtowed loudly in front of Prince Mo, Your Highness the Crown Prince, please quell your anger. Please forgive today's matter on account of the former emperor, on account of my Chen family, it's no use looking at anyone. Crown Prince Mo coldly interrupted Chen Chaoji's words as he gazed at the people behind him with a serene gaze. Prime Minister Zhua, you brought so many people here today to see such a lively royal scandal. Do you think we should let you all leave like this? Chen Chaoji felt chills all over his body. The group of Chen clan servants behind him were frightened to the point they rolled on the ground, and they repeatedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. They mumbled a mess of, your servant didn't see anything and, your servant won't say anything. However, Mo Lian's extremely chilly gaze landed on them, as if she was looking at a group of corpses. The Prince of Giant Pain and his son continued to cower on the side, not daring to utter a single word. It wasn't that they were cowardly and afraid of trouble. Their Prince of Giant Pain's estate was truly innocent in this matter. Yet the Queen Dowager insisted on tearing apart the Crown Princess at the Prince of Giant Pain's estate. With the Crown Princess's temper, it was already very polite of her not to behead this old witch on the spot. Now, for the sake of the imperial family, the Chen family should be secretly happy that the Empress Dowager's corpse was left intact. If they continued to cause a ruckus, the Crown Prince, who was soft-hearted, sick, and crazy, would annihilate the entire Chen family. What couldn't he do? He was angry because of a beauty. He was just like his father. Stay up late, grabbed one end of the white silk and worked with another guard to tighten it. The Empress Dowager's hands desperately clutched the satin around her neck. She stared at Prince Mo and the little Crown Princess in horror. Her throat made a gurgling sound, and the light in her eyes dimmed bit by bit. Arbor stared at her coldly without any change in his expression. Old concubine Fang was stopped by 2 guards on one side. She couldn't rush over at all. She could only scream at the top of her lungs, no, no. Her gaze landed on the young Crown Prince Consort's stern face. For some reason, she couldn't help but shudder when she saw this expression. The 2 personal guards behind old concubine Fang were naturally stopped by the Crown Prince's people. Just now, they were caught off guard and the white silk was broken. The people of the night pavilion were very angry. Naturally, they wouldn't let them go forward to destroy it. Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager. Old concubine Fong cried bitterly. This appearance the little crown princess's faint eyes couldn't help but glance at old concubine Fong's face. In the depths of the palace, was there such a friendship? This old concubine Fong was a good person who valued friendship and righteousness. Chapter 4208. Empress Dowager Chen's head drooped heavily and was placed to the side. Aoyi stepped forward to report, reporting to your highness, the crown princess and Empress Dowager Chen have been dealt with. Chen Chaoji's entire body couldn't help but tremble slightly, as if this was the first time he had seen this pair of demonic stars. He cast a fearful glance in the direction of the crown prince. Prince Mo only glanced at him coldly and then said, "Left Prime Minister." Left Prime Minister Chen Chaoji immediately knelt on the ground in fear and said repeatedly, "Your Highness, this subject didn't see anything today. This subject can swear a blood oath with these servants that we won't dare to say a word about Her Highness the Empress Dowager." Mo Lien looked at him indifferently and said, "Left Prime Minister. Yes, old subject is here. This prince sees that your health hasn't been good recently and you look old. Such a troublesome thing has happened at home. If you really can't do it, you can try your best to ask Imperial Father to remove you from your post and retire early. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" Mo Lien's gaze was indifferent as he spoke, without the slightest ripple. But in Chen Chaoji's ears, it was no less than a shocking wave. So, the crown prince was forcing him to resign on his own accord? The crown prince's meaning couldn't be more obvious. If you leave by yourself now, you can still get a good reputation and retire well in your hometown. If this prince makes a move, Chen Chaoji's snot and tears flowed freely. His heart felt as bitter as if he had swallowed coptis. He hurriedly knelt and said, "This subject will consider it carefully." Prince Mo nodded indifferently and then didn't look at him anymore. Grand concubine Fong was still silently crying beside Her Highness the Empress Dowager's corpse. Prince Mo glanced at her and said indifferently, "Her Highness the Empress Dowager is unrestrained and unethical. She can't enter the imperial mausoleum of Mount Heaven Saint. As for her funeral, Grand concubine can think about it." After saying that, he took his wife's small hand and turned around to walk out. Grand concubine Fong felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She was so angry that she couldn't help but sway. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, death is like an extinguished lamp. Even if the Empress Dowager and the Crown Princess had many grudges before, now that she is dead, shouldn't she enjoy the glory that belongs to her?" Mo Lien abruptly turned her head, her phoenix eyes revealing a terrifying storm. Old concubine Fong was startled by his deep and terrifying gaze. She couldn't help but take 2 steps back. "If it wasn't for the sake of the royal family's reputation, I wouldn't have done it. Today, we should cut her into 1,000 pieces." Mo Lien roared angrily. "Now that we've left her with an intact corpse, what's there to be dissatisfied about? What was this old witch trying to do? He wanted to completely destroy his Jojo. Was there really such a disgusting woman in the world? There was no deep hatred between the two of them, so why did they have to do such a disgusting thing?" Old concubine Fong was frightened by the crown prince's ferocious appearance. She took a few steps back and stammered, Your Highness. You don't know what's good for you." Mo Lien said angrily, "Come, throw this evil woman out of the imperial city and burn her." Old concubine Fong was so scared that she couldn't help but fall to the ground. She reacted in a second and hurriedly begged for mercy, "Your Highness, you can't do this, you can't." Mo Lien didn't listen to her and threw a glance at Ao Yi. Ao Yi immediately took the order and led his men forward. They wrapped the old woman's corpse in a white silk cloth, jumped up the eaves, and disappeared without a trace. Old concubine Fong couldn't help but burst into tears. She seemed to be caught unprepared. Chapter 4209. As for Qin Qianhe, that lass, who was kneeling on the side, she was already trembling all over in fright. How would she dare to utter a single word? "Your Highness, how should we deal with the two of them?" When Qin Qianhe heard someone mention them, he hurriedly waved his hands and shouted, "It has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with me. It was Her Highness the Empress Dowager who summoned me here, saying that there's something good for me to take advantage of." How would he have known that this good thing would suddenly become a fatal disaster? Mo Lien scoffed coldly. She had never seen such a brainless person. He didn't even consider that Empress Dowager Chen had him come over to slander the crown princess. Whether this matter succeeded or not, it didn't seem to benefit him. He only had himself to blame. Since he was willing to board Empress Dowager Chen's lousy ship today, he was certain that he would lose his life. Mo Lien didn't feel like wasting any more words with him. She directly waved her hand and said, "Doesn't Imperial Father have a barrel of bliss? Throw it in." "Yes." "What barrel of bliss?" Qin Qianhe's face instantly paled in fright, scrambling to crawl in Qin Chaoji's direction. "Uncle, uncle, save me." Qin Chaoji's old face darkened as he glared at him. When he saw him pouncing over, he dodged to the side without hesitation. The Qin family could be considered to have been destroyed in their hands. Save him. Right now, he hated that he couldn't eat his flesh and bones, so how could he save him? After that last Qin Qianhe was dragged away, Qin Chaoji's expression darkened as he was also taken away by the Night Pavilion to sign the Heavenly Dao Blood Oath. Mo Lien pulled his wife's small hand and turned to the King of Jianping and his son, who were still pretending to be quails. "King of Jianping. Ah, here, here." The old King of Jianping hurriedly came before the young couple and smiled apologetically. "Crown Prince, don't worry. No one in my King of Jianping estate dares to say a word about today's matter." In reality, the servants of the King of Jianping estate had already been dispersed by him. Other than him, Kuan, and a few personal guards, there really wasn't anyone else who saw this farce. What kind of joke was this, the old King of Jianping thought. He clearly knew that the Empress Dowager Jianping was tearing the crown princess apart in her estate. How could he be so stupid as to let people come and watch? What good could come out of watching? According to his past experience, none of the people who surrounded the pair of ominous stars would have a good ending. For example, Qin Chaoji today. The old King of Jianping chuckled with a brilliant smile on his face. "Crown Prince, you can rest assured. Leave the matters here to me." The Crown Prince of Jianping, Mo Kuan, couldn't help but cover his face. He always felt that the flattering smile on his old father's face was very painful to the eyes. Mo Lien nodded and did not say anything more to King Jianping. He pulled his wife towards the entrance of King Jianping's mansion. The old King of Jianping and his son sent the young couple off all the way to the door. The joyful smile on their faces could not be concealed. "Get the hell out of here." The young crown princess read these words from the old King of Jianping's eyes and looked at him expressionlessly. "King Jianping, I see that the purple jade ink orchid in your courtyard is not bad." The old King of Jianping's heart thumped heavily, and he hurriedly revealed an innocent old face. "Not at all, not at all. Crown Princess, the exotic flowers and herbs in my estate are not even half as many as in Prince Kang's estate." "Oh." The old King of Jianping's eyes twitched. He turned around and said, "Come, hurry and bring the purple jade ink orchid out for the Crown Princess." Not long after, a servant hurriedly brought over a pot of purple jade ink orchid. The young Crown Princess reached out to hug the flower pot and expressionlessly looked at the old King of Jianping. Chapter 4210. She casually tossed 2 storage talismans to the old Prince of Jianping. A gift in return. She wasn't taking his precious flowers for free, she was exchanging them for something else. The old prince of Giant Pain was taken aback. He stared blankly at the back of the little crown princess as she boarded the carriage. He was already mentally prepared to be robbed by the bandit crown princess. Why was it so strange today? Dad, Dad. Mo Cohen reached out excitedly. I heard that the storage talismans drawn by the crown princess are extremely spacious and can store living things. Give me one, Dad. The old prince of Giant Pain casually stuffed the 2 storage talismans into his pocket before turning to leave. Mo Cohen. Was he his biological father? Arbor looked at the pot of flowers for a while before suddenly turning to hand it to Mo Lien. For you. Ji Chen, who was currently leaning against a corner of the carriage and drinking wine, nearly spat out her wine when she saw this. She teased, "Yo, my flower-like husband." Arbor nodded his small head. Yes. Ji Chen couldn't resist bursting into laughter. Mo Lien also patted her head in amusement before taking the pot of flowers and putting it away in her inner world. Jojo, you're so nice. Arbor's eyes curved as he grabbed his hand and asked, will that woman's matter cause you trouble? What trouble can there be? Prince Mo harumphed. At most, he would be dragged to the emperor's study and reprimanded. She was already dead. If she became that old woman, would the emperor fly into a rage out of humiliation and hang his biological son up to give him a beating? An hour later, at the emperor's study. Mom! Prince Mo dashed out and hastily threw himself behind by Wuxia. The White Queen hastily shielded her child and glared at Mo Lusheng, who ran out of the study with a whip. She asked vigilantly, what are you doing? Mom! Royal father is going to beat husband. The little stoic angrily pushed Mo Lien behind her, glaring at Mo Lusheng with a shared hatred for a common enemy with the White Queen. Mo Lusheng, this damned brat was getting more and more promising. He was wondering why he had obediently come here to receive his punishment today. It turned out that he had asked his wife to go and get reinforcements. The Empress Dowager did such a shameless thing. Why did you hit your son? Empress Bai said angrily. It wasn't your son who asked her to do it. Mo Lusheng looked at his wife speechlessly and pointed at Mo Lien and Arbor. It would be strange if this matter had nothing to do with them. No matter how desperate the Empress Dowager was, it was impossible for her to go to Giant Pain Mansion and do such a thing in broad daylight. Arbor said angrily, Mother, Imperial Father is being unreasonable. This matter clearly has nothing to do with my husband. That's right. The White Empress protected her son and glared at Mo Lusheng in annoyance. Don't bother my son with such nonsense in the future. They didn't have eyes, yet they insisted on provoking us. They deserved to die. The Empress snorted. She had long sent people to Giant Pain Mansion to investigate this matter in detail, so how could there be anything she didn't know? The Empress Dowager was in the wrong, but the two of them actually scared Grand Consort Fong into falling ill. The White Empress was taken aback and then snorted. It must be because she couldn't take the scare. The young couple nodded at the same time, expressing their great agreement with their mother's words. The Emperor was instantly angered into laughter. Just as he was about to roar at this pair of treasures, he suddenly saw a eunuch hurrying over and repeatedly kneeling. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Lord Preceptor of the State has sent an urgent report. What happened? The Emperor took the letter the eunuch presented and opened it to read. His expression changed slightly. Chapter 42:11. Prince Mo poked his head out from behind the White Queen and glanced at the letter in his father's hand. What kind of message could that state preceptor send back? He was probably thinking about his wife again, right? What is it? The Queen glanced suspiciously at the letter in Mo Lusheng's hand. Mo Lusheng didn't hide it from her and directly handed the letter over. Bai Wuxia swept a glance over it and harumphed. Truly absurd. Since the Sea of Forgetfulness's dragon clan wants to see their daughter-in-law, why didn't they come to receive her themselves? They actually detained the state preceptor now and even sent a letter to threaten him. What does this mean? Arbor was startled and looked at the letter in the White Queen's hand. The Queen turned and handed the letter to Arbor. Jojo, just take a look. You don't need to pay attention to this. What hasn't the state preceptor seen before? How could he be detained so easily this time? Seeing that his wife was suspicious, Mo Lushing couldn't help but defend the state preceptor. After all, he's in the sea. No matter how capable the state preceptor is, it's probably hard to deal with some things in the sea. Besides, the dragon clan has many clansmen, and the state preceptor only brought several dozen people on this trip. If the other party insists on detaining them, there's nothing we can do. By Wuxia harumphed. In short, my daughter-in-law isn't going anywhere. She has to rush over just because the Sea of Forgetfulness's dragon clan wants to see her. What kind of logic is that? Mo Lien nodded, very much agreeing with her mother's words. If they want to see my wife, then let them send someone to invite her themselves. Not only did they have to invite her, they had to invite her loudly and announce it to the whole world. His Qiao wasn't a little stray cat on the roadside that anyone could pick up and bring home. Mo Lushing speechlessly looked at his wife and son's identical disdainful expression and facepalmed. All right, then send a letter back to them and let the Dragon Clan's clansmen consider it themselves. The Crown Prince nodded and pulled his wifey's hand over. He lowered his head to glance at the little stoic. Jojo, if you don't want to go, no one can force you. Xiao Mu raised her head to look at him, her lips curling up as she replied in a gentle voice, I know. Bai Wuxia chuckled and pulled the child with one hand and his daughter-in-law with the other. Little Tang Yuan's wife, it's about time. Let the three of us go and have a meal. Mo Lushing hurriedly took a few steps forward and called out aggrievedly, Wuxia. Mo Lien smiled. Mother, what about father? Your father? He's busy with government affairs. Humph, let him eat by himself. Wife. Mo Lushing raised his feet and followed, how could he be willing to fall behind? He was wrong, okay. I won't hit my son next time. At the very least, he had to find a time when Wuxia wasn't around to beat up that little bastard. Otherwise, wouldn't he be asking for trouble? Bai Wuxia pursed her lips in amusement and winked at her son, silently implying, son, don't be afraid. Look at how obedient your father is in your mother's hands. Mo Lien's phoenix eyes curved slightly, and she nodded with a smile. The family of four chased each other to the dining hall and had a rather sumptuous meal. Afterwards, the Crown Prince followed the Emperor to the study to discuss matters. Queen Bai pulled her daughter-in-law to chat about their matters in the lower star domain. When the Crown Prince came to pick them up later, he looked at his mother's smiling face and asked curiously, Mother, how was your chat with Jojo? It was very good. Queen Bai didn't understand why her son asked this. Chapter 42:12. Mo Lien couldn't help but want to laugh. He suppressed his smile and tugged at his wifey's hand. Jojo, what were you talking about with mother this afternoon? We were talking about you. Arbor's eyes sparkled as she said, you were so cute when you were young. It couldn't be, weren't they just chatting? Could it be that mother was the only one chatting? Mother told him everything that happened before he was 3 years old. Mo Lien instantly felt unwell. What good things could happen before he was 3 years old? Wasn't it eating, drinking, and pooping everywhere? Ah pooey. Mo Lien pulled his wifey and fled from mother's place. He pinched his wifey's little face. Jojo, forget everything mother said before. That won't do. Xiao Mu hugged him and climbed up his waist. I've remembered everything that royal mother told me. I didn't expect you to be so fun when you were young. No wonder people call you little glutinous dumpling. Mo Lien, where was his authority? The next day, Arbor went to the Star region to visit Duan Muqing. Her expression was especially serious. Qi Xianxian saw that she pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Her heart couldn't help but beat wildly. Jojo, is it especially serious? Xiao Mu's small stoic face was taut. She abruptly flipped her wrist, and a glistening green fruit with small hairs on it appeared in her palm. The fruit was only half the size of a palm. It looked sparkling and translucent, and a strange fragrance wafted over. When Qi Xianxian smelled the aroma, her saliva almost dripped out. Her eyes widened as she said, "Look, it looks delicious." Little Fatty's mouth twitched, and he reached out to tug at her. Why was this child so easily tempted by good food? "Jojo, what is this?" Lu Yu, Jiang Shaoxin, Ma Ta and the rest also surrounded her and looked curiously at the fruit in her hand. "Holy fruit," Arbor said expressionlessly, his large eyes glaring fiercely at Duan Muqing. Duan Muqing smiled bitterly and nodded at her. "Yes, yes. I was too presumptuous. I still have to ask Jojo first." Qi Xianxian hurriedly nodded. "It's good that you admit your mistake. Jojo, is this the fruit of the little tree?" Mata asked with a smile. Arbor nodded and threw the fruit into Duan Muqing's hands. Fortunately, the second sacred fruit that the small tree bore had already taken shape in the divine territory. Otherwise, Duan Muxian would have to use the medicinal power to control his wounds and wait for a while. Now, there were 4 or 5 small fruits hanging on the branches of the little tree. It seemed that as long as the star field was filled with divine power, it would not be a problem to obtain more saint fruits in the future. If a god domain was transformed into a saint domain, perhaps the holy fruits could be endless as well. Perhaps she could first feed the little tree with the holy stone ores that the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and the others had excavated. While Arbor was deep in thought, Duan Muqing had already eaten the sacred fruit. Everyone looked at him eagerly and could not help but ask, "How do you feel? Is it delicious?" Qi Xuanxuan's question made everyone laugh. This child only cared about whether it was delicious or not. How much was she drooling? Duan Muqing slowly raised his hand. Everyone could clearly see that the rotting wound on his wrist was gradually disappearing in a matter of seconds. Little Fatty exclaimed happily, "Quick, look at the wound. This sacred fruit is really magical." Duan Muqing was also rather excited. Chapter 42:13. She hurriedly looked up at Arbor and called out softly, "Jojo." Arbor nodded. "I'll get Little Tree to send you to the island. Focus on your advancement and don't think about anything else." Duan Muqing nodded and disappeared in front of them. Qi Xianxian giggled and said, "Jojo, Duan Mu ate the holy fruit. Can he still advance?" "Yes." Arbor thought for a moment and said softly, "If there are no accidents, he should be able to break through to the godly state." Everyone's eyes widened, revealing a shocked expression. Was the holy fruit so effective? Duan Muqing could break through to the godly state with just one holy fruit. Does that mean Duan Muqing will soon enter the 5 spirits reincarnation? Arbor grunted. When he finishes advancing, we'll send him out of the star sector. The 5 spirits reincarnation should not be a big problem for Duan Muqing. As long as he entered the godly state and stabilized his cultivation, the 5 spirits reincarnation was just a formality. Everyone chatted for a while more before Arbor sent them off to play. When she left the star sector, she saw Prince Emo step through the door and smile at her. "Jojo, Father received a message from the Sea of Forgetfulness's dragon clan early this morning." With that, he handed a jade talisman to Arbor. Arbor touched the jade talisman and saw a message on it, "To the Emperor of the Divine Prefecture, the Dragon Clan has sent people to the Divine Prefecture's imperial capital, Dragon Flame City. The transportation talisman array will arrive in a few days. We'll talk then." Arbor raised his eyebrows and said noncommittally, oh. His attitude was cold as if it had nothing to do with him whether they came or not. Mo Lien knew that she had a knot in her heart about the Dragon Clan. He patted her head and said softly, "Let's listen to what they have to say." Arbor glanced at him. "We have nothing to do today. Let's go to the hot spring at Half Moon Cliff's splendid villa." "Sure." Mo Lien nodded and smiled. "Your Highness." Xiao Yi jumped in from outside the high wall and said with a gloomy expression, "Something happened, Your Highness." Mo Lien raised her eyebrows slightly. "What happened?" "Your Highness." Xiao Yi cupped his hands and said, "The people of Medicine King Island are carrying Sir He Wen's corpse and making a ruckus at the entrance of the palace. She's clamoring to find the crown princess and pay with her life." Arbor was taken aback. Sir He Wen passed away. What was going on? When they parted ways in Jiaowei City, He Wen and Ni Hanji were still fine. Why did Sir He Wen die in less than 2 days? Mo Lien also frowned. What's going on? I've already sent people to investigate, but I haven't found out the details yet. Xiao Yi said, "Your Highness, we can't let them make a ruckus outside the palace gate. Should we chase them away?" Mo Lien sneered. "One of their own is dead. Why are they looking for my crown princess? Let's go and take a look." Arbor looked puzzled. Sir He Wen had died inexplicably, and the people of Medicine King Island were looking for her. No matter how she looked at it, there was something fishy about this matter. He Wen's personality had always been peaceful and he treated people very well. Arbor also couldn't figure out who would have wronged him. Mo Lien lowered her head and glanced at her. "You don't have to care about these things. I'm fine." Arbor raised her hand and shook Missouri Lien's hand. She also had doubts in her heart, so she naturally wanted to go out and see what was going on. Moreover, the people of Medicine King Island had already come to pick on her. If she shrank back and didn't accept the challenge, wouldn't it make people think that she had a guilty conscience and didn't dare to meet people? What a joke. Chapter 42:14. Mo Lien also thought of this point. She exchanged a glance with Arbor and said with a nod, "All right, I'll have someone make the arrangements." At the same time, Ni Hanji was kneeling beside His Excellency He Wen's corpse, her head drooping as she secretly wept. Several hundred Medicine King Island disciples around her were clamoring loudly to have her come out. Have her come out to see us. She sent people to kill His Excellency He Wen. What, she dares to do it but doesn't dare to admit it. Don't think that you'll be fine if you hide in the palace and don't see anyone. Our Medicine King Island isn't that easy to bully. Right. Have her come out. Come out. The crowd was surging with emotions. Many common people only dared to hide in the corners of the street far away, secretly peeping at the scene. Medicine King Island made such a big fuss by directly carrying His Excellency He Wen's corpse to the palace gates. This incident alarmed both inside and outside the imperial court in less than an hour. People like the king of Giant Pain naturally wouldn't go to watch the little crown princess's commotion, but there really weren't a small number of people who ran over to watch because they had nothing better to do. Unlike the common people, those skilled and bold cultivators either jumped onto the nearby eaves or simply stood behind Medicine King Island's group to take a closer look. What do you guys think is going on here? I don't know. We also went last time in Jiaowei City. The Crown Princess did indeed attack Great Master He Wen's disciple, Miss Ni Hanji. But in the end, after His Excellency He Wen appeared, the Crown Princess let them go. From what those people from Medicine King Island are saying, the Crown Princess flew into a rage out of humiliation after the incident and still didn't give up sending people to make trouble for Miss Ni. His Excellency He Wen was impatient to save his disciple and was heavily injured by several masked men. He died not long after. That's truly tragic. I heard he was slashed 17 to 18 times consecutively. Even if he was a cultivator, he wouldn't be able to withstand this kind of attack. This person described it vividly as if he was present at the scene. Everyone immediately filled in a series of scenarios in their minds, describing the little stoic as a narrow-minded and extremely vicious person. The few people who were spreading the rumors were still talking in the crowd when they suddenly felt a chill on their necks. When he looked again, he saw that he had been lifted up by someone and was being carried towards the palace gate. The few of them screamed at the same time. In the blink of an eye, a group of purple forest guards had thrown him in front of the people from Medicine King Island. Ni Hanji, who was kneeling on the ground with her head bowed, was startled. She instinctively took a step back and glared angrily at one of the purple forest guards. "What are you trying to do?" The disciples of Medicine King Island flew into a rage. Several of them drew their swords from their waists. "Your Highness, the Crown Princess has arrived." As the palace door opened, Mo Lien and Arbor walked out hand in hand. No one could see any hint of panic on the little Crown Princess' face. From beginning to end, there was only an indifferent stoic face, and her watery eyes swept over everyone. The few people who were seen by her clear eyes immediately felt a sense of inferiority. It was as if they were merely clowns jumping around like bedbugs and grasshoppers jumping around in front of the palace gate. Under this kind of dazzling light, everyone was at a loss for what to do. Standing at the very front of Medicine King Island's group was a young man in flowing white clothes. His long hair was combed meticulously, and his expression was very solemn and dignified. "Your Highness, Crown Princess, this is Medicine King Island's young island master, Sir Wei Su." Chapter 42:15. Aoyi took a few steps forward and introduced this young master in a deep voice. Because it was obvious that the little Crown Princess did not know this person at all. Arbor sized him up and saw that although this person was young, his face was cold and solemn, as if someone owed him 108,000 taels of silver. He looked dignified but old-fashioned. It seemed that his temperament was also very rigid. Arbor gave a fair evaluation in his heart. His gaze moved elsewhere and landed on Ni Hanji, who was kneeling on the ground and crying. Oh, it had only been a few days, but this Ni Hanji looked much more haggard. Her pair of lively big eyes were now sunken. Her hands clutched the hem of her clothes tightly as she knelt beside Hewen, tears still falling from her eyes. Miss Ni's current crying appearance was obviously much better than a few days ago when she was baring her fangs and brandishing her claws in Jiawei City. Just by looking at how many people around her were looking at her with sympathy and pity, one could see how pitiful this Miss Ni was at this moment. Compared to the evil, little Crown Princess, this Miss Ni was obviously much more pitiful. Wei Su bowed to Mo Lien and Arbor and went straight to the point. "This Wei is here to discuss the matter of our island's great consecrator, Hewen." Mo Lien saw that this person was well-mannered and had a decent attitude. She said faintly, "After we parted in Jiawei City, we husband and wife have not met with your island's great consecrator." Ni Hanji suddenly raised her head and suppressed a trace of anger. "Of course you didn't come to find trouble with us. Isn't it the same for people of your status to send people to find trouble with us? Those black-clothed youths who came to kill me were dressed like them." Ni Hanji's face was full of anger as she pointed at Aoyi and the others. The latter looked innocently at the people of Medicine King Island and couldn't help but laugh. "Miss Ni, you're too funny. What can this attire mean? You Medicine King Island people can also wear this kind of black clothes if you want to change your clothes." Ni Hanji said coldly, "The Crown Princess says one thing, but behind her back, she's saying something else. If it's not her, who else can go against us? Who would be so persistent as to send people to kill me? It's all because I offended her back in Jiawei City." Ni Hanji said in a tearful voice, "At first, she had no choice but to let me go because of my master, Hewen. The more he thought about it, the more unhappy he felt. That's why he secretly sent people to surround and intercept us. Master died to protect me. The murderer must pay with his life. A life for a life. A life for a life. The disciples of the Medicine King Island roared in agitation. Their young faces were filled with indignant anger. Arbor turned his head and glanced at them. His cold gaze fell on Wei Su. After a while, he said, "Everyone on Medicine King Island has no problem with their intelligence, right?" The little crown princess's voice was not loud, but it was clearly heard by everyone present. Everyone couldn't help but be slightly stunned. "You're saying that I sent the Purple Forest Guard to kill someone? Where's the evidence?" Arbor looked at them coldly. "Just based on Ni Hanji's mouth. Then can I also say that Sir Hewan was killed by Ni Hanji?" Ni Hanji's expression changed, and her eyes turned red. Chapter 42:16. An ominous glint blossomed from the depths of her bloodshot eyes as she abruptly glared at Xiao Mu. She shrieked, "Xiao Mu! You're so vicious! I've never seen such a vicious person in my life," Ni Hanji shrieked. "How can you slander others like this?" Arbor's cold eyes scanned her body. Suddenly, she said calmly, "Originally, I was just like you, speaking as soon as I opened my mouth. But now, I'm really going to suspect you." A person's first reaction of guilt and fear was the most realistic. Just now, when she said, "Ni Hanji killed Sir Hewan," Ni Hanji's expression changed abruptly. It was as if she would die from fear in an instant. It was too realistic, too realistic. But was it just a possibility? Ni Hanji was Sir Hewan's only disciple. Hewan had always valued and loved her. For Ni Hanji's sake, he had not hesitated to bear the punishment himself in Jiawei City and stood up to ask the little crown princess to let Ni Hanji go. Logically speaking, Ni Hanji should be respectful to her master. She could not have done such a thing. Unless something had happened between them. Wei Su's handsome face was as dark as water. He turned to Arbor and said coldly, "Crown Princess. You must have proof before you speak. You slandered junior sister Ni like this. Do you think the people of Medicine King Island can be bullied by others?" Arbor glanced at the man coldly. "You also know that you must have proof before you speak. Then why did you carry Sir Hewen's corpse and cause a ruckus in front of the palace without proof? Also, you sent people to mix in with the crowd and spread rumors. Do you think this crown princess has a good temperament and can accept everything?" Wei Su's face darkened. "Who sent people to spread the rumors?" Aoyi stepped forward and kicked a hooligan on the ground. "Then we'll have to ask the person who spread the rumors." With that, he gave a look and the Purple Forest Guards went forward to search the hooligans. They each found a small bag of spirit coins. The bags were of the same design and had the same weight of spirit coins. It was obvious that they were given to them by the same person. Wei Su's expression instantly turned extremely ugly. "Who paid you to come here and spread rumors?" The thugs begged for mercy, but they didn't know who gave them the money. Everyone said that when the man appeared, he was wearing a bamboo hat, gave them a bag of spirit coins, and asked them to say a few words in the crowd. What else was there to be unclear about? Sure enough, someone had secretly arranged this, bribing these idlers to come to the palace gates and spread rumors. "Ni Hanji, are you that bamboo hat man?" Arbor coldly glanced at her, taking in her exceptionally pale complexion. This person's guilty expression was too obvious. Ni Hanji's face turned angry as she snapped, "You've wronged me. Wrongly accused." Xiao Mu gazed coldly at Ni Hanji and asked, "Do you think that no one will know what you've done in secret?" Ni Hanji's expression changed abruptly. Her hands tightly clenched the corner of her skirt. What do you mean by that?" The spirit summoning charm was disrespectful to the dead. Arbor naturally didn't want to use it on Sir Hewan. Arbor had another method that could quickly investigate the truth. She cast a thought-provoking glance at Ni Hanji. "Have you heard of time reversal?" Ni Hanji's heart pounded. She had a feeling that the situation was about to spiral out of control. Chapter 42:17. How could it be like this? Things shouldn't have developed like this. Why did this matter take a turn for the worse when it came to the young crown princess? Ni Hanji's gaze was a bit panicked and uneasy. She glanced at Arbor and bit her lip before saying coldly, "I've truly never seen someone as malicious as you. You did such a vicious thing yourself, yet you still wrongly accuse others." The little stoic raised her hand and was about to throw out a dictum talisman. However, the latter immediately shrunk back in fright and scrambled behind the young man. She cried out in alarm, "Senior brother Wei Su, senior brother Wei Su, save me. She wants to kill me to silence me, to silence me." Wei Su gazed icily at the young crown princess and raised his hand to block Ni Hanji. He said gravely, "Crown princess, the matter hasn't been explained clearly yet. Isn't it inappropriate for you to act rashly like this?" Arbor was simply amused by this inflexible young man. He put away the dictum talisman and said coldly, "This is a dictum talisman to make her speak the truth. I didn't want to kill her." Wei Su frowned noncommittally, and his expression contained a bit of distrust. He straightened his body and blocked Ni Hanji's path like this. At this time, Qi Xianxian, the little fatty, and the others stealthily ran out from the star domain and blended into the crowd. When they heard Arbor's words, they couldn't resist jeering and sneering. "Oh, look at this Miss Ni. Is she that scared? It can't be that she really did something shameful, right? That's right. If she doesn't have a guilty conscience, why would she fear the dictum talisman test?" Ni Hanji's face was livid, and her eyes kept darting around. She shouted angrily, who is hiding in the crowd? Come out and speak if you have the guts." Qi Xianxian harumphed and quickly walked out of the crowd. "Come out and speak then. Do you think I don't dare?" Ni Hanji stared at Xianxian coldly. She bit her lip and leaned against Wei Su's leg. "Senior brother Wei Su, you can't believe their words. It's Arbor. Arbor sent people to kill my master. It's her. Miss Ni, don't be so presumptuous as to slander me. That day in Jiawei City, our Jojo let you off for the sake of your master. With her personality, she wouldn't be so bored as to send someone to cause trouble for you. That's right. If I wanted to kill you, I would have done it on the spot. Why would I need to go through so much trouble?" Little Fatty snorted. "You are all her relatives and friends. Naturally, you will speak for her." Ni Hanji cried out with a pale face. She couldn't help but shrink behind Wei Su. "Senior brother Wei Su, you must help me. Help me. They want to kill me. Kill me. Don't tell me you have paranoia." The little fatty glanced at the woman speechlessly. Ni Hanji's cowardly appearance was indeed very difficult to enter Wei Su's eyes. However, as the young master of Medicine King Island, he had to prioritize the people of Medicine King Island in everything he did. Although he was extremely displeased that Ni Hanji showed such cowardice in front of outsiders, relatively speaking, he still believed Ni Hanji's words more. His Excellency he treated Ni Hanji so well, so how could junior sister Ni harm her own master? That crown princess was simply making irresponsible remarks and spouting nonsense. Arbor stopped Qi Xianxian and the little fatty, who still wanted to argue, and turned to look at Wei Su. "If it's proven that I've been wronged, how will Medicine King Island compensate?" The little stoic's voice was chilly. Chapter 42:18. Like beads falling onto a jade plate, her clear eyes that could reflect a person's figure were even more serene. Wei Su looked at this pair of eyes and couldn't help but be a bit puzzled. This little stoic's eyes were clear and cold, looking very open and candid. She didn't seem to be as vicious as Ni Hanji had previously fabricated, extorting personal gains in return. Wei Su pondered for a moment before nodding and saying, if this matter is proven to be unrelated to the Crown Princess, then it's my Medicine King Island's fault. At that time, I, Wei Su, will personally apologize to the Crown Princess and offer her a 9-abyss spiritual fruit. Everyone started whispering to each other upon hearing this. Whether it was ordinary people or cultivators present, very few people had heard of the 9-abyss spiritual fruit. But Arbor naturally knew. This was a divine rank medicinal fruit. It was sparkling and translucent like a grape, but its color was light gold. It was said that long-term consumption would help increase one's divine power. It wasn't important whether it could increase one's realm, but it was said that its taste was extremely good. After being chilled in midsummer, it was crisp and tasty, and it was also extremely hydrated. Thinking about it, if this fruit was planted in the star domain, it should be pretty good. Arbor didn't give Wei Su a chance to back out and said with a nod, remember clearly what you said. Mo Yen lowered his head to glance at his wife and slightly loosened his grip. The little stoic nimbly formed several transparent hand seals in succession, scattering them into the surrounding air in succession. Suddenly, the still air around them continuously produced strips of ripples, dispersing before everyone's eyes like water waves. Ni Hanji knelt next to His Excellency Hewan and tightly gripped a corner of her skirt. She revealed a hesitant and indescribable expression. What was the stoic face doing? Her indescribable hand seals looked complicated and strange. They didn't seem like talisman techniques. Ni Hanji wished for nothing more than to explode and kill her on the spot. However, doing so would instead expose the drawback of her guilty conscience. She sat there stiffly, unable to budge an inch. At this time, a very clear and transparent image appeared in front of Wei Su. The surrounding crowd let out a series of gasps and exclamations, evidently also seeing the appearance of this transparent image. There were only 2 people's figures in the image, and it moved very quickly. Ordinary people with poor eyesight could only see the 2 people arguing. Wei Su's face darkened bit by bit. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that the 2 people in the image were Ni Hanji and Hewan. Sir Hewan seemed to be reprimanding Ni Hanji at first. After that, Ni Hanji seemed to reply with something. Sir Hewan then stared at Ni Hanji in shock and barely managed to stabilize himself. Just as he was about to leave, Ni Hanji stopped him. His Excellency Hewan argued with her for a while. He angrily flicked his sleeve, kicked Ni Hanji, and said something. Ni Hanji knelt down and kowtowed, hugging Sir Hewan's leg and begging for something. Hewanga's face sank, but he didn't take it to heart. He angrily threw down these words and walked towards the door. Thus, a classic scene occurred. Ni Hanji pulled out a short dagger from her waist and stabbed at the back of Hewan's waist. Sir Hewan fell down with a stunned expression. He wanted to turn his head to look at his disciple, but he was unexpectedly stabbed a few more times by the dagger. At the end of the image, it was Ni Hanji holding a bloody dagger with a vicious expression. Gasps could be heard all around. The disciples of Medicine King Island who were originally making a ruckus all turned to glare at Ni Hanji. Chapter 42:19. What was there to be unclear about now? Although there was no sound in the video, how could Ni Hanji stab His Excellency Hewan desperately with a knife in the video be fake? Ni. Junior sister Ni. A green-robed woman beside Wei Su roared, You! Wei Su was naturally so infuriated by this scene that his entire body trembled. He looked at Ni Hanji as if he was looking at a dead person. Ni Hanji shuddered under this gaze and hurriedly shouted, It wasn't me, it wasn't. Senior brother Wei Su, senior sister Yen Shui, don't be fooled by this witch. This is witchcraft, witchcraft. Ni Hanji's body trembled as she shouted angrily, You know, she's a talisman master, so she naturally knows witchcraft. Pretending that my master was killed by me, isn't that what she's good at? How could I possibly kill my master? Ni Hanji hurriedly crawled a few steps on the ground and crawled in front of Wei Su and Yen Shui. She cried out in a low voice, "Senior brother Wei Su, senior sister Yen Shui, I've been framed." Scram! Yen Shui, who abhorred evil, kicked Ni Hanji away. Her eyes were spitting fire as she unsheathed her sword with a clang. "You're a crazy bastard. How did Sir Hewen treat you? Everyone on Medicine King Island knows about this. You murderous beast, you're worse than pigs and dogs, how dare you treat Sir Hewen like this? Today, I'll get rid of you on behalf of Sir, and clean up the sect for Medicine King Island." Ah! Ni Hanji rolled on the ground, avoiding Yen Shui's sword. She scrambled to crawl towards Wei Su, whose face was as dark as water. "Senior brother Wei Su, senior brother Wei Su, believe me, believe me. I didn't kill Master, I didn't. It was her. It was Arbor, she wrongly accused me, she harmed me. She used talisman techniques to fake this video." Ni Hanji trembled all over, looking at Arbor as if she was looking at a ghost. What witchcraft was this? How could she present the events of 2 days ago so clearly in front of everyone? Too terrifying, too terrifying. This woman is simply a monster. It was too terrifying. Ni Hanji's entire body trembled, and she kept shrinking towards Wei Su's side. With her knees curled up, she put on a pitiful appearance and cried out, "Senior brother Wei Su, you'd rather believe an outsider than your own junior sister? Slut!" Yen Shui's sword flashed towards Ni Hanji. "At this time, you're still pretending to be pitiful. Everyone saw everything clearly in the video just now. You despicable bitch. How dare you deceive everyone on Medicine King Island and make us come here to cause trouble for the Crown Princess. Not only did you kill people and frame them, but you also tried to stir up hatred between the imperial family of the Divine Prefecture and the Medicine King Island. Your intentions are worthy of death." The more Yen Shui spoke, the angrier she became. She wished she could stab Ni Hanji to death on the spot. However, Ni Hanji hid behind Wei Su and was unwilling to come out. With a trembling voice, she cried out, "Senior sister Yen Shui, I didn't frame you, nor did I frame the Crown Princess. On the contrary, it was you, the Crown Princess, who relied on your superior power to frame me based on this blurry video. I naturally won't admit it." Mo Yen sneered, "Why are you still talking nonsense with her? Deal with her. What are you doing?" Yen Shui was like a mad lion, glaring at His Highness the Crown Prince and gripping the hilt of her sword tightly. Chapter 42:20. My Medicine King Island's inferior disciple will naturally be dealt with by my Medicine King Island. No one else needs to interfere. The Crown Prince couldn't help but laugh coldly as he retorted, "I see that you guys are indecisive and don't know how to deal with it. I'll just deal with it on your behalf. Do it." Yes. Several black shadows darted out from all directions and grabbed Ni Hanji's arms. In a flash, Ni Hanji was dragged out from behind Wei Su as if she was a chick. Ni Hanji kicked and tried to resist, but her arms were twisted and broken by the purple forest guards and thrown in front of the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. With a loud bang, Ni Hanji fell to the ground like a dead dog and desperately shook her legs that were still intact. "What are you doing? Senior brother Wei Su, senior brother Wei Su, are you just going to watch a few outsiders abuse your junior sister of Medicine King Island?" Yen Shui said with a sullen face, "No matter how incompetent our Medicine King Island is, we don't need others to deal with a slut." Arbor's cold gaze swept over the girl. This green-robed girl had a long face and high cheekbones. From her appearance and tone of voice, one could tell that she was a proud and arrogant person. And in Medicine King Island, she was probably someone with an extremely high status. Wei Su looked at Ni Hanji, who was lying on the ground and twisting her body, and suddenly cupped his hands in Arbor's direction. "Crown Princess, my Medicine King Island was rash in this matter. Senior brother Wei Su. Ni Hanji was shocked and shouted, unwilling to give up, "You actually believe outsiders and not me? Slut, shut up." Yen Shui reprimanded angrily. "Do you think that everyone else is a fool? Don't tell me that no one has eyes to see such an obvious image. You said that the Crown Princess of China slandered you and made a fake image, then why does it look so real? Could it be that she can even simulate the clothes you wore that day and the furnishings in the room?" When everyone heard her words, they couldn't help but understand. That was indeed the case. The furnishings in the image just now were obviously real. Moreover, the clothes on their bodies and various other details were also rather realistic. It clearly didn't seem to be fabricated with talismans. Thinking of the words, time reversal, that the Crown Princess had mentioned before, the people of Medicine King Island, although they did not know what it was, all of them secretly remembered it and planned to check the ancient books later to see if there was any record of it. Wei Su took out a jade box and presented it to the young Crown Princess with both hands. "This is a small token of my apology." Arbor glanced at him and took it without saying anything. She liked people who were straightforward and could admit their mistakes. That was a good character. What he hated the most was the kind of person who couldn't help but put up a last-ditch struggle even when the truth had already been exposed. Ni Hanji was one such example. She didn't open the box in front of everyone and directly put the jade box into her inner world. Then, she turned around and glanced at Ni Hanji. Wei Su continued, "Crown Princess, this one has a presumptuous request. Please use a dictum talisman on her. I want to know what Sir Hewan was arguing about with her before he died." Arbor had the same intention. Previously, it was Wei Su and the others who stopped her from using it. Now, it was their own people from Medicine King Island who requested to use the dictum talisman. That was great. However, Ni Hanji trembled all over and screamed. She glared at Wei Su and said sharply, "Senior brother Wei Su, is this how you protect your junior sister?" Wei Su looked at Ni Hanji coldly. "You only have yourself to blame for deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors. Now, I just want to know the truth." Chapter 42-21. Senior Brother Wei Su. Ni Hanji gritted her teeth and hatefully said, "Even you were deceived by this woman?" Wei Su directly turned his face to the side, not wanting to say another word to her. Wei Su had nothing to say to this kind of person who had been caught red-handed but was still trying to argue his way out of it. A purple forest guard pulled her up on her knees, and Arbor flicked a dictum talisman toward her, its talisman energy instantly tunneling into her glabella. The jade talisman returned to the young Crown Princess's hand, and Ni Hanji, who was kneeling on the ground with downcast eyes, was already under the dictum talisman's control. Wei Su coldly asked, "Ni Hanji, why did you kill your master?" Ni Hanji abruptly looked up, her face contorted, and she abruptly said, "He asked for it. He only knows how to say that I'm wrong all day long. I'm his true disciple." Ni Hanji angrily roared, "He always nags me about my willfulness and recklessness, saying that I should restrain my temper. Why should I restrain myself for someone else? What does that Crown Princess have to be so smug about?" Ni Hanji's face contorted. She boasted that she could refine the resurrection pill, but in the end, she couldn't even save her own master. Moreover, if it weren't for my master telling her the resurrection pill's prescription, I think she would have been completely helpless. What's so great about her? She says she's invincible, but it's extremely difficult to do it. Since she's always so arrogant, I'll add a few strokes to the original Bodhi Revival herb's medicinal diagram so that she'll never be able to find the real Bodhi Revival herb in this lifetime. She won't be able to save her master. The young Crown Princess's gaze instantly dropped below freezing. Those two pitch-black pools seemed to be filled with poison, so dark that one couldn't see the end of them. The resurrection pill's leaves are needle-shaped and will never bloom nor bear fruit. She originally thought that His Excellency He Wen's medicinal knowledge was poor and incorrectly drew the resurrection pill, but it turned out that this damn woman tampered with it. If she didn't know the truth, if she didn't have Planet Forest and obtained the revival Bodhi grass long ago, wouldn't she really be like this wretched woman said? Wouldn't she be unable to obtain the real revival Bodhi grass and save Murong Sun in this lifetime? Murong Sun was already so pitiful. She was already dead, so why did she have to feel sorry for her? Why couldn't he come straight to her? Why did she want to implicate her master? The little crown princess felt suffocated and uncomfortable. She pulled out the vine whip from her sleeve with a sullen face. The barbed vine whip landed on Ni Hanji's face. Ugly face, even more vicious heart. However, Ni Hanji acted as if she didn't feel anything and continued to talk non-stop. Whose master is he? Who was her heart leaning towards? When he found out about the revival Bodhi grass, he actually turned around and left, saying that he was going to ask for forgiveness from the crown princess. He also said that he would take my cultivation and expel me from Medicine King Island, and that he would never recognize me as his disciple again. Ni Hanji's face turned cold and vicious as she spoke. Do I, Ni Hanji, still want to live? Do I want to live well? If I'm expelled from Medicine King Island by him, what future do I have? What future do I have to talk about? What did I do wrong? I'm only struggling for my life to survive. If I don't kill him, he'll cripple my cultivation and expel me from Medicine King Island. How can I, Ni Hanji, live a lowly life like a normal person? That kind of lowly person whose life is worthless isn't even worthy to carry my shoes. Everyone was stupefied as they watched her hooting while kneeling there with a bloody face. Chapter 42-22. The current Ni Hanji had a bloody whip mark on her face. It was not pretty at all. The onlookers truly felt that the young crown princess was right. Her face was ugly, but her heart was even uglier. Wei Su turned around and bowed to the young crown prince consort. Apologies, Your Highness the crown prince and crown prince consort. It was our first impression that caused you trouble. My Medicine King Island was in the wrong first. I, Wei Su, am willing to accept the punishment of 3 lashes. After speaking, he looked at Yen Shui, who was standing stiffly at the side. Young Island Lord. Beat. Wei Su removed his outer robe and said coldly with his back facing the crowd. Yen Shui bit her lips and removed the whip from her waist. Her hands were as fast as lightning, and she lashed out 3 times with great accuracy. 3 bright bloody scars appeared on Wei Su's back. Arbor's eyes moved slightly. Seeing him so straightforward, he did not say anything. Yen Shui went forward to pass him the medicine, but Wei Su only put on his outer robe calmly. He turned to Prince Mo and cupped his hands. Your Highness, Crown Princess, Ni Hanji has committed a grave mistake. I will personally escort her back to Medicine King Island to receive the most destructive heavenly punishment. Oh. You want to take her away? Mo Lien glanced at the other party noncommittally. The heavenly punishment of Medicine King Island was to cripple a person's cultivation, cut off their legs, and make them into a medicine man like a stick. Mo Lien had heard of this punishment before. It was famous for being as cruel as being branded by a cannon. Ni Hanji had already regained her senses. Hearing Wei Su's words, she was so frightened that she trembled continuously. The heavenly punishment of Medicine King Island was so horrifying. How could she go through it? Wei Su. You dare to do this to me? Have you forgotten how much my master has contributed to Medicine King Island all these years? It's precisely because Sir Hewan is a highly respected person on the island of the Medicine King, yet he was killed by a treacherous villain like you, Wei Su said coldly. Shouldn't a vicious woman like you be sentenced to death? Cripple her cultivation before taking her away, Wei Su said coldly with a decisive expression. Yen Shui had long disliked her. If it wasn't for this woman making a mistake and picking Medicine King Island to cause trouble in the Imperial Palace, how could Senior Marshal Brother be put on the spot and receive 3 lashes as punishment in order to make up for his mistake? Medicine King Island had countless ways to destroy a person's cultivation. Yen Shui took out a bottle of medicine from her inner world and directly poured it into Ni Hanji's mouth. Ni Hanji struggled with all her might, whimpering and whimpering. It was nothing more than her noble status, that she was already a heaven-grade alchemist, and so on. Yen Shui hated her for being ruthless. How could she show mercy to her? In just a moment, he poured the entire bottle of medicine into Ni Hanji's mouth before turning around to look at Wei Su. Wei Su turned to face the Crown Prince and the young Crown Princess and said in a low voice, "I will be taking Ni Hanji away. Please do not stop me. Don't worry, Medicine King Island will definitely not tolerate such a treacherous person who killed her master." Arbor looked deeply at this Master Wei and nodded with an indifferent expression. Since it is a family matter of Medicine King Island, it is naturally inconvenient for us to interfere. Master Wei can do as he pleases. Wei Su nodded and bowed to the young Crown Princess. Many thanks. Then, he had someone drag Ni Hanji away like a dead dog and led the disciples of Medicine King Island away quickly. Mo Lian's gaze landed on his stiff back. An interesting person. Your Highness, the Dragon Clan's envoy has entered the city. Chapter 42-23. Arbor couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Her meaning was clear. The Dragon Clan had probably already left before the message was sent, right? That was why they could come so quickly. Who are you? Xiao Mu was a bit curious. The merfolk she had seen before were at most side branches like Granny Long, or ordinary merfolk commoners. She had never seen a proper member of the Dragon Clan. The Purple Forest Guard who came to report bowed. Reporting to the Crown Princess, the visitor is said to be the Dragon Clan's young master, Long Qian. Master Jojo was surprised. Oh. The Dragon Clan had spent a fortune to invite her. It seemed that they were very curious about her. Go and invite my big brother here. Yes. The Purple Forest Guard obeyed and left. Arbor looked up at her husband, who was deep in thought. You think it's strange too, don't you? He's suddenly so attentive to me, as if I'm so important. As the little fellow spoke, she couldn't help but snicker. He clearly didn't care about her at all before and had left her to fend for herself for a long time. Now that he was suddenly so attentive, she was really not used to it. It made her hair stand on end. Mo Lien frowned unhappily. He reached out and pulled her into his arms, rubbing her little face. You're not allowed to talk about yourself in such a nonchalant tone. You're very important, very important. You're my Jojo. The most important Jojo. Mo Lien lowered his head and bit her lips as a punishment. The little fellow twisted her little head and squirmed in his arms. Let my big brother receive that person. I don't want to see them today. Okay. Mo Lien nodded and smiled. Then we'll follow our original plan and go to Half Moon Cliff to soak in the hot spring. Why don't we stay there tonight? Come back after dinner tomorrow. Mo Lien said with a smile. The mushrooms on Half Moon Cliff taste pretty good. Arbor's eyes lit up. Sure. After the two of them finished their discussion, they held hands and ran to Half Moon Cliff to enjoy the scenery. They sent a message to the miserable Mu Xingchen, asking him to go and receive Long Huan. Being abandoned by the irresponsible couple, Big Brother felt rather helpless, but he could only bear the burden without complaint. The place where Long Huan stayed was the largest guest house in the capital city. By the time Mu Xingchen received the message and rushed over, he was already a step too late. When they arrived at the entrance, they were informed that the Dragon Clan's people had been arranged to check in an hour ago. Mu Xingchen was led by the person in charge of the guest house through corridors and bridges, all the way to the Chui Hua garden where the Dragon Clan lived. The person in charge laughed bitterly and said, "There are more than 30 people in this group. There was a girl with a fiery temper. Just now, outside the guest house, there was a guard who took a few more glances at that person before he raised his whip and whipped him. His strength is not ordinary. That person seemed to have thought of the little girl's ferocity when she slapped him. He couldn't help but shudder and shake his head. This official won't accompany young Master Mu in. Mu Xingchen nodded and walked into Chuihua Garden. Who are you? Just as he reached the entrance, he was stopped by two vigilant men in long, diagonal robes. I'm Mu Xingchen. Mu Xingchen reported his name in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. The gatekeeper naturally knew the purpose of this trip since he could follow his master, Long Huan, to the sovereign capital. He naturally knew what kind of people Arbor and Mu Xingchen were. Chapter 42-24. One of them cupped his fists politely at Mu Xingchen. Please wait for a moment. Then, he hurriedly went in to report. Mu Xingchen didn't mind and waited outside the door. His expression was calm, and he didn't feel awkward about being left outside. Not long after, he heard footsteps. Mu Xingchen raised his head to look. With a glance, he saw a graceful young lady wearing a rainbow-colored cloak. She was surrounded by a few people as she walked over. The girl walked to the entrance of Chuihua Garden and sized Mu Xingchen up. Her expression revealed faint displeasure. Why are you alone? Mu Xingchen raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, am I being despised? Seeing that he didn't say anything, the girl was clearly unhappy. Why didn't Aunt's daughter come to welcome you? Mu Xingchen lost interest in conversing with her when he saw that she was rather rude. His handsome face darkened as he said indifferently, the crown princess isn't in the capital today. The girl frowned as if she was trying her best to suppress her rising anger. Then why are you here? Mu Xingchen cupped his fists with an indifferent expression. This one was rude. I didn't know that the dragon clan's threshold was so high. Farewell. The girl's eyes flashed with anger, and her left hand subconsciously reached for the golden whip hanging at her waist. Suddenly, a mellow and deep voice sounded from behind. Shangyun, don't mess around. Long Shangyun awkwardly curled her fingers and slowly lowered her hand, glaring fiercely at Mu Xingchen. When she turned around, her arrogant and despotic expression from before was suddenly swept away. She flew to the person's side and leaned over like a little bird, calling out sweetly, "Big brother." Mu Xingchen felt his hair stand on end. The person who came was a tall and handsome young man. He wore a slanted golden robe, which was slightly different from the people of the three provinces. His long hair was held in place with a purple wooden hairpin, and the remaining part of his hair hung down to his waist. He looked gentle and easy to get along with, but the aura of a superior couldn't be concealed. This one is Long Huan. The man in front of him followed the etiquette of the three provinces and cupped his fists at Mu Xingchen. He smiled and said, "My sister was rude just now." Mu Xingchen nodded indifferently and reported his name again. Mu Xingchen. Because Long Shangyun gave him a very bad impression, Mu Xingchen was too lazy to be nice to her. He simply said, "The Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince left the city today and will only return tomorrow. Please wait in the hotel." Long Qi was stunned for a moment before nodding with a smile. All right. Big brother. Long Shangyun stomped her feet in dissatisfaction as a faint trace of anger flashed in her eyes. We don't have much time, Sister Shui Yuan. Long Huan glanced at her. Long Shangyun pouted and shut her mouth unhappily. Mu Xingchen cupped his hands. I've delivered the message. Goodbye. Cousin, please wait. Long Qi hurriedly called out to Mu Xingchen. Mu Xingchen looked back indifferently and noncommittally glanced at Long Huan. Is there anything else, young Master Long? Long Huan saw his cold expression and knew that Mu Xingchen must have developed a bad impression of Long Shangyun. He hurriedly smoothed things over. Cousin is older than me by 2 years. There's no need to be so distant. Call me young master. Just call me Huan. I don't dare. Mu Xingchen coldly rejected. The Long family's threshold is too high. Xingchen can't afford it. A trace of awkwardness appeared on Long Huan's face. Chapter 42-25. On the other hand, Long Shangyun stomped her feet in anger and scolded, "You're so untactful. You're really shameless." Long Huan turned around and glared at Long Shangyun. "Shut up." Long Shangyun pursed her lips and stomped her feet. She huffed and shouted, "Brother, why are you purposely trying to curry favor with this person? With her brother's status, why did he have to compromise so much? In their sea of forgetfulness, in such a large sea area, who would dare to disobey Big Brother's orders?" This Mu Xingchen was merely a youth from a talisman aristocratic family. He was just slightly more talented than the average person, but in their sea of forgetfulness, he was nothing. The tiny China was not even one-third the size of forgetfulness. A young master from a small aristocratic family in China actually dared to be so unsmiling and sarcastic to the noble prince and princess of the Long royal family. He was simply audacious. Mu Xingchen really did not know that the family his mother had risked her life to protect back then was actually this kind of family. Why? No wonder his sister was resentful and did not want to see them at all. So this maternal family was really such a weird breed? If the entire Long family was like this, Mu Xingchen felt that Jojo was right not to see them. If the person standing here today was Jojo, with Jojo's personality, this girl would probably be slapped. If you don't know how to speak properly, don't say it. This is China, not your forgetfulness. Who are you acting all high and mighty for? In any case, Mu Xingchen would not fall for it. With Long Shangyun's ruckus, the atmosphere became even more awkward. Long Huan felt a little apologetic. It was his first time meeting his aunt, Long Chuyun's son, and he actually made such a fuss. This was really a little inexcusable. However, he also understood Shangyun's temper. She had a child's temperament, and her temper came and went quickly. If Mu Xingchen was willing to go along with this little girl and say a few words, everything would probably be fine. However, looking at his cousin's expression, it was obvious that he already detested the siblings. When he thought about how he had already offended his cousin before even meeting the main character of this trip, Long Huan felt a slight headache. Cousin, Shangyun is only 16 years old. She is young and inexperienced. If she has offended you in any way, please forgive her. Mu Xingchen glanced at him with a faint smile and said indifferently, "I wouldn't dare." Then, he cupped his hands towards Long Qing and said, "I won't disturb your rest. I'll take my leave first." Just as he turned around, he heard a delicate reprimand. "How dare you?" The shadow of the whip swung against the wind. Pa! Mu Xingchen stretched out his hand and grabbed the end of the whip, making it taut. Although this sneak attack failed, Mu Xingchen's palm was cut by some of the hidden barbs at the tip of the whip. Long Yen was shocked. "Xiang Yun! Stop it now!" Mu Xingchen's eyes instantly turned extremely cold. He stared at Long Shangyun so coldly that the latter couldn't help but tremble slightly. Long Huan leaped forward and patted Long Shangyun's shoulder. "Still not retracting your hand?" However, how could Long Shangyun be willing to withdraw her hand? This whip of hers was made from the tendons of a 500-year-old suspending sea serpent. It was indestructible and unbreakable. It was a rare 15th grade spirit artifact. Naturally, she wouldn't easily let go of it and throw it into the hands of others. However, in the next second, Long Shangyun discovered that her golden whip had turned into pieces under the other party's palm. Mu Xingchen mercilessly threw the fragments of the whip in his hand onto the ground. Chapter 42-26. The next day, Lady Qiao Qiao came over and played at Half Moon Cliff's splendid mountain villa for a day. She ate well and lived very comfortably, and only returned to the city with her husband in the evening. After receiving the news, the couple immediately returned to the Mu residence to visit Mu Xingchen. Mu Xingchen didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw his sister's tense expression. "I'm really fine. It was just a minor injury yesterday. I've already taken medicine. Look, can't you see the wound at all?" Mu Xingchen raised his left hand and flipped it in front of the little girl to let her take a look. Jojo still doesn't know the effects of the medicine she made. The little girl's expression darkened. Young Master Mu's heart pounded as he watched. He felt that his sister's little face was acting out a drama that foreshadowed a storm. Aoyi. Aoyi is here. The little girl blinked and looked at a certain someone who suddenly stuck his head out of the window. She said expressionlessly, "Take some men to the guest house and chase the Dragon Clan people out of the city. Tell them to scram. Scram back to where they came from. This crown princess doesn't want to see anyone." Mu Xingchen was dumbfounded. Aoyi was also dumbfounded. He subconsciously glanced at his master. The crown prince glanced at him. Aoyi immediately quivered and nodded. "Yes, I'll do it right away." What a joke. How could anyone who offended their crown princess end up well? With the young crown prince consort's personality, she would still chase them away regardless of whether or not they were from her maternal family. Mu Xingchen quickly advised, "Jojo, big brother didn't suffer any grievances. It's just a small matter." Arbor shook his head and looked at his husband. Mo Lien patted his head and said in a low voice, "Big brother, these people seem to be here for Jojo. They detained the state preceptor and wanted Jojo to meet them. Now that they've personally invited him, they want Jojo to go to the sea again and again. Isn't that strange?" Mu Xingchen was taken aback. He thought about it again and nodded hesitantly. Could it be that they have something to ask of Jojo? Mo Lien nodded. "That's right. I haven't seen them take you and your sister seriously for the past 10 years. When the Dragon Clan members saw you this time, they immediately asked about Jojo. Isn't that obvious enough?" Mu Xingchen's expression darkened. Could they be plotting something? Damn it. Back then, wasn't it enough for them to make their mother leave her hometown and marry her to the imperial capital? Now, he even wanted to scheme against his own sister. Why? "I don't know what they're after yet," Mo Lien said calmly. "But the Dragon Clan's attitude is indeed very strange. Anyway, Jojo had been suspicious of them from the start. In this world, there was no such thing as gratuitous flattery. They must have thought that Jojo had something to gain from him." Mu Xingchen was so angry that he slammed the table. "These people from the Dragon Clan have gone too far." Arbor raised her hand nonchalantly and said calmly, "That's how the human heart is. They hadn't seen each other for so many years. How much affection could they have for each other?" Arbor didn't believe it. People could only develop feelings for each other after interacting with each other. This saying was true. Nephew and niece. They hadn't seen each other for more than 10 years. Now, they were suddenly trying to please her because of blood ties. Did they think she was a naive teenager? Chapter 42-27. Mu Xingchen looked at his sister's cold eyes and felt a little uncomfortable. He knew that if Jojo had not been through so much, she might have been a soft and innocent little girl right now. Perhaps he would end up like Long Shangyun, being spoiled by his family to the point of being whipped if things didn't go his way. He did not know if such an experience was good or bad for Jojo. It was just that, in his bitterness, he felt that it was not easy to have such a sister. Mu Xingchen raised his hand and patted his sister's fluffy little head. He said in a low voice, "If you don't want to see him, then don't. I will support you unconditionally." Arbor's eyes flickered. She rubbed her little head and said softly, "I won't cause trouble for you, big brother." Mu Xingchen could not help but laugh. Big brother is not afraid of trouble. Mo Lien smiled faintly. He looked at his wifey before looking at the man sitting on the side who was smiling brightly like the moon in the clear sky. He did not know if it was an illusion, but he felt that his brother-in-law was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye. On the other hand, in the guest house, it was a real mess. Aoye was a man of action. After receiving the crown prince's order, he immediately brought a group of friends from the night pavilion to do something. In order to successfully drive the people out, Aoye specially found a few dark court guards who were above the godly state to help. As expected, he had predicted correctly. The moment he relayed the young crown prince consort's intentions, the members of the Long clan actually exploded. "Damn, why didn't you get angry when you hit the crown princess brother without any hesitation? Why didn't you say that you were from the crown princess family? Don't worry about them. If they don't obey, tie them up and throw them out of the city." Aoye waved his hand and gave the order to the row of youths behind him. "Drive the dragon clan out of the city." Yes. The two sides were about to fight. The people from the dragon clan naturally did not want to be thrown out in such a humiliating way. They had to fight, but Aoye was a jerk. He knew that the situation was a little dangerous. In order to ensure that the mission was completed, he brought more than 1,000 purple forest guards to help. A dozen of them could beat a dragon clan guard to the point of vomiting blood. Now, there were more than 10 of them surrounding one person. The dragon clan was in a tragic state. By the time Long Huan realized that the situation was not right, the entire guest house was already in a mess. Long Qing had no choice but to fly up into the air and say coldly, "Everyone, please stop. Everyone. I have a keepsake from Aunt Chuyun here. Aunt Chuyun once said that year. As long as you have the token, you can ask her descendants to do something for you." Stay Up Late waved his hand. "Fight." Everyone pretended not to see anything and fought even more fiercely. The few people in charge of the hotel twitched their mouths and squatted in the corner with their hands on their heads. How would they dare to stop the fight? Long Huan immediately became angry. "Aunt Chuyun has passed away for many years, don't tell me you still want to ruin her reputation." Stay Up Late gritted his teeth in anger. This kid is really something. She actually held a token and wanted to threaten their crown prince consort into submission. It was not that he wanted to criticize this brat, but with the crown princess's personality, seeing how arrogant he was, it was very likely that she would directly kill him and take away the token. "Fight." Stay Up Late raised his hand and said angrily. He had followed the little crown princess for so many years, how could he not know what kind of person the little crown princess was? Oh. Chapter 42-28. She hated people who were coerced the most. The little crown princess would not blame them even if they killed the entire dragon clan today. Long Huan was anxious when he saw that Aoye and the others were stubborn. He saw that a few dragon clan members were injured and even more were tied up. His sister, Long Shangyun, had also suffered a few times. Her arm had almost been injured. Long Huan's expression darkened. He quickly grabbed the jade pendant and squeezed it lightly. A figure suddenly floated into the air. "Child, is this my child?" The woman in the silhouette had clear and gentle features. Her almond-shaped eyes seemed to scan the surroundings with great vigor. Aoye hurriedly called for everyone to stop. He looked at Long Huan in shock. Long Huan immediately recalled the woman in the figure. He sighed in relief and said with a cold expression, "Go invite your master. If she wants to see Aunt again, tell her to come see me personally." Aoye glared at Long Huan coldly. Then, he turned and left without a word. "You will regret this." Long Huan. "Brother." Long Shangyun cried as she threw herself into Long Huan's arms. She touched the non-existent wound on the back of her hand and pouted. "Brother, these people are too unreasonable. We shouldn't have come to find her. We should have told her to come to the river of forgetfulness. Would she dare not come?" The miniature of her mother's life lantern before she died is in our hands. Shut up. Long Qian glared at his sister angrily and pushed her away in annoyance. Shang Yun, when will you be more sensible? Can you not cause trouble for the family all the time? This matter could have not developed like this. If Xiang Yun had not attacked Mu Xingchen unexpectedly and angered the young crown prince consort, she would have been dead already. Why would the little crown princess send people to chase them away? Why would he do such a lowly thing and use the miniature of his aunt's life lantern to threaten the little crown princess? One wrong step would lead to many more mistakes. Didn't he know that his actions would make the little crown princess hate him even more? Although he had never met this little crown princess before, the dragon family had known about the siblings' movements for a long time. They knew Mu Xingchen and Arbor's personalities like the back of their hand. The young crown prince consort wasn't someone who was willing to suffer a loss from beginning to end. Just by looking at her actions today, one could tell what kind of person she was. Trouble. Long Shangyun, however, didn't know that she had caused trouble. She widened her teary eyes and looked at Long Yen with grievance. Big brother, you actually pushed me? You're scolding me for an outsider. Surround this place. No matter if it's a human or a bird, I'll make it impossible for them to escape. A cold voice came from afar. Fast, it came too fast. Two silhouettes descended from the back of the blue bird as it flapped its wings. Long Shangyun's astonished gaze landed on the white-clothed young man. Before she could recover from her shock, she saw an emerald-green vine sweeping towards her arm. Have mercy! Long Huan cried out in alarm. However, the vine whip still landed heavily on Long Shangyun's arm. Before she could finish her scream, she suddenly felt her body become light as a vine whip coiled around her neck and pulled her over. Long Huan's pupils contracted. He saw a beautiful woman dressed in blood-red clothes standing beside a man in snow-white clothes. 5 fingers as white as jade were strangling his sister Long Shangyun's neck. The miniature of the life lantern in exchange for your sister's dog life. Exchange? You're not exchanging. Chapter 42-29. Long Shangyun could only turn her head slightly to look at Arbor with her neck being choked. After a while, she gritted her teeth and said, You actually, shut up. Xiao Mu bluntly raised her hand and heavily smacked the top of her head. If you spout another word of nonsense, I'll cut off your tongue. Truly, only Xiao Mu could reign in Long Shangyun, this kind of domineering character. After being yelled at like this by Sir Jojo, Miss Long was instantly terrified. Although he wished he could take a bite out of it and drink it, his life was still in the hands of others. He finally recognized the reality and obediently shut his mouth that was full of nonsense. Arbor looked in Long Huan's direction and said impatiently, How about it? Do you still need to consider? If she had only disliked the Long family before, then now, it could be said that Arbor had no good feelings towards them at all. When she heard Ao Ye's report that Long Huan had used her mother's soul miniature to threaten her, Arbor felt anger rush to her head. If it wasn't for her remaining rationality telling her that the 2 people in front of her were very likely her cousins. Perhaps the moment they met, she would have reached out with her sharp claws to tear apart this talkative woman in front of her. These despicable fellows did not dare to attack her in the open. Instead, they schemed in the dark time and again. They were cold and vicious. If they had any respect for Long Chuyun in their hearts, they wouldn't have used her life lantern miniature to threaten her today. When she thought of this, Arbor's remaining so-called bloodline was completely burned away by the anger in her heart. She tightened her grip on Long Shangyun's neck. Even from a certain distance away, Long Shi could hear the soft cracking of his sister's neck bone, which made his heart jump. No. Long Huan hurriedly reached out a hand and tried to steady her breathing and emotions. She shouted, Cousin, please stop. My patience is very limited. Xiao Mu's beautiful, bone-chilling eyes emitted a chilly glint. Throw the life lantern miniature over. Don't play any tricks on me. Otherwise, I'll strangle your sister to death right now, extract her soul, and make her into a mechanical puppet. I'll make her guard my mother's memorial tablet for all eternity and kowtow in apology. Long Shi felt a chill in his heart. Long Shangyun broke out in a cold sweat as a rare trace of fear appeared in her eyes. Long Huan cupped his fists towards Arbor and bowed, "Cousin, we don't mean any harm. Just now, it was only because I wanted to see you that I made such a decision in a moment of desperation. I wasn't being disrespectful to Aunt." "Shut up!" Xiao Mu bellowed. "Who wants to listen to your nonsense? Do you think you have the right to bargain with me now? What a joke!" Long Shangyun's mouth was slightly agape in shock. She felt as if the 5 iron-like fingers of the small hand around her neck were deeply embedded into her flesh. Mo Lien saw that his wife had lost control of her emotions and was both anxious and angry. He stared at Long Huan with a gaze so cold that it was as if snow was about to seep out. "Kill dash," he only spat out 2 words. A panicked scream interrupted him. "No, no, no, no. I'll give you the token." Long Huan didn't dare to say anything else. He hurriedly reached out and threw the token that looked like a round jade pendant towards Arbor. Mo Lien raised his hand and caught the jade pendant. His cold eyes glanced towards Long Huan. The latter only felt that the cold light was sharp and threatening. Chapter 42:30. The words that came out of her mouth were a very sincere request. "Cousin, can you let Shangyun go first?" Arbor looked down at the woman who was on the verge of death from his strangling, and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. This ignorant woman only has herself to blame. Arbor lifted his leg and kicked her butt, causing Long Shangyun to roll down from the roof. Crackle, 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 crackle. A string of bricks and tiles flew up, and dust flew everywhere. On the other side, Long Huan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He probably did not expect the young crown prince consort to kick his sister, Long Shangyun, at the last moment. Long Shangyun had probably never been so unlucky in her life. After being kicked down from the roof by Arbor, Long Shangyun fell heavily on the ground and felt that she had lost all her face in front of others. A searing pain came from his neck. Long Shangyun was on the verge of exploding. She wanted to jump out immediately and tear apart the woman who dared to treat her like this. But the strange thing was that no matter how hard she struggled on the ground, she could not break free from the ground. Long Huan floated to the ground and quickly walked to Long Shangyun and bent down to help her up. Long Shangyun only felt dizzy, and she couldn't muster up any strength in her body. Long Huan quickly realized that something was wrong with Long Shangyun and quickly helped her up. He asked in a low voice, "Shangyun, how do you feel?" I can't stand," Long Shangyun said through gritted teeth. Her angry eyes wanted to glare in Arbor's direction. Unfortunately, Xiao Mu was currently standing on the eaves with Crown Prince Mo, looking down at them from above. Long Shangyun was weak and could not even lift her head. Naturally, she could not glare at them. Arbor looked coldly at the siblings and held the round jade pendant with the miniature of his mother's life lantern. "What is the purpose of this trip?" Hearing her cold voice, Long Huan could not help but feel nervous for a moment. Long Huan took a deep breath and tried to speak in a gentle tone. "Cousin, you have misunderstood us. It's fine if you don't want to talk. See him out." Long Huan's eyes widened slightly. His expression was as if his mouth had been stuffed with a duck egg, filled with curiosity and confusion. He felt that his cousin's thoughts were too jumpy. He could hardly understand her speech patterns. This cousin of his seemed to dislike the two of them, which could be seen from her cold eyes. Wait. Stay up late, and the others were about to chase them away again. Long Huan couldn't help but take a deep breath. "Cousin, can we talk calmly?" Arbor sneered. "Talk. What right do you have to negotiate with me? The miniature of my mother's life lantern. What would you have done if I hadn't come to see you? Crush it? Long Huan's expression changed slightly. He quickly shook his head and said, "No, no way." The little girl's cold gaze fell on his face, her eyes revealing only 3 words, "I don't believe you." Long Huan felt like he had shot himself in the foot. He had been too rash just now. Now that the knot had been planted, it would be difficult to untie it. "Cousin, can you listen to me for a moment?" Long Huan asked Xiao Mu sincerely as he supported Long Shangyun. "Purpose?" Arbor asked relentlessly. "I really don't have a purpose." Under her intense gaze, Long Huan took a deep breath. Chapter 42-31. Arbor stared at him coldly, clearly not listening to a single word he said. "Send them away. There is no need to meet them in the future." Arbor turned to look at Mo Yen. The latter nodded and took her hand. "Cousin." Arbor looked at Long Hua coldly. "I am not close to you." Long Yi's heart turned cold. He knew that this time, he had seriously offended this unpredictable cousin of his. "Grandmother's time is almost up. I hope to see you and your cousin one last time." Mu Xingchen, who had been standing behind Arbor without making a sound, blinked. "Why didn't you say anything before?" Long Yun took a deep breath. "I plan to go with my cousin and cousin." Seeing the little crown princess's cold gaze, Long Hua changed his words with difficulty. "And the crown princess? Let's sit down as a family and talk about this. I didn't think that things would turn out like this. Crown princess, please forgive her." Long Hua bowed. "It was my sister's fault for being rude. The crown princess has already taught her a lesson. Can you remove the drug in her body first?" Even now, Long Shangyun couldn't move or stand up. If Long Huan still didn't realize that the young crown prince consort had done something in secret, then he really was a fool. Arbor looked at him expressionlessly. After a while, he said, "Do you think that everyone in the world is a fool except for you?" Long Hua's heart tightened. "Why does the crown princess say that? I have not seen you for more than 10 years. You can threaten me with the miniature of my mother's life lantern. Are you worthy of my trust? My elder brother and I have been around for so many years, but you have never thought of us. I really think it's funny. With your intelligence, can you only think of such a lousy excuse? Is it really so important that my elder brother and I can let the dying old lady see her one last time?" Arbor suddenly laughed loudly, his laughter filled with endless coldness. "Long Chuyun, do you still remember what she looks like? You don't even remember Long Chuyun, so why are you looking at me with such a hypocritical expression and saying that you missed me?" Jojo Mu Xingchen looked at his sister sadly. Mo Yen suppressed her anger and held Arbor's small hand to comfort him. "You're disgusting," Arbor said coldly. Her eyes were as bright as diamonds, as if they could clearly illuminate the darkest and ugliest side of a person's heart. Long Qian was speechless. Thinking of the true purpose of this trip, he could only remain silent. "Crown Princess, I know you have a grudge against the Dragon Clan. Don't think too highly of yourself." Arbor's voice interrupted him. "The Dragon Clan is just a stranger to me. I don't have any resentment or anger towards you." Long Qian stilled. Arbor said coldly, "Do you suddenly go crazy and get angry at strangers when you're walking on the streets?" "Strangers? Strangers?" A trace of anger rose in Long Qian's heart. From beginning to end, the girl had tried her best to distance herself from the Dragon Clan. While he felt helpless, he was also slightly angry. He had already humbly pleaded for leniency, but the other party's stubborn look really made him feel helpless. "You're too wary of us." Long Qian could only say this dryly. Xiao Mu responded with an indifferent glance before turning around to leave with Mo Lian in tow. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.